Hello and welcome back to the Base on Balls podcast here at the Johnny Lee Memorial League, where today we'll be talking about Week 10 of the season. I'm your host, John Height. This episode, joining me today is Cody, Hen, Paul, and Bracton. So we got a lot to talk about, but first and foremost, Bracton, again, we'll lead off with you. How are you doing?
Doing fine. Despite the loss this week, a lot of talent was brought into my organization this week, including Ellie De La Cruz. I'm very happy and optimistic about the way things are going to go as my schedule starts to ease down, as the gauntlet's kind of over now, which is good, finally. So even though I took the L this week, I'm in a good mood tonight.
Cody, how are you?
I'm good, man. Hard-fought victory this week. As expected, Bry threw the literal kitchen sink at me. Ended up scoring 706 points, but my team had a really strong week, and I was able to get the win. Anytime you win, it's a good week, so I'm happy.
Love to hear it. Hen, how are you?
I'm doing well. Obviously getting back on the win column. Another great performance by the Beach Dogs, over 700 points. I think we might be getting cruise control right now at 500. A little interesting stat, obviously, still a lot of season left to be played, but the current 2-7 matchup right now would be me and Cody. Obviously that's not a traditional first-round matchup, but we obviously have our expectations higher, and we're trying to climb the standings even more, and hopefully this was a good start to a nice little run.
And Paul, how are you?
Doing good. Got a win this week. 6 wins now on the season, 6-4. But my team looks a lot different now than it did a week ago, and we will get into. So we'll see. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to be winning this year, getting that 7th seed or not. We'll see how it plays out.
Should be very exciting. So let's head straight to the matchups. And Cody, we'll start with yours since that was the quote-unquote matchup of the week. So Bowling Green defeated the Rocky Mountain Vibes 821-706. Very high scoring by both teams. And Cody, you can start us off. How do you feel?
Yeah, man. I felt like my team really put together a complete performance. My bat scored 433. My arm scored 388. Relief pitching was well. I didn't get a lot out of Spencer Strider this week, which, I always talk about that complete performance. A 2-point start from Strider is anything but complete. But, I dabbled in the streaming game a little bit. I think you have to when you play Bry. I got 13 points from Sam Long. I got 12 points from Nick Robertson, 24 points from Cole Irvin, 21 points from Jesus Sanchez, 12 points from Jose Siri. 12 points from Kevin Kiermaier, 22 in a spot start for Willie Calhoun. Streaming, I think it's rare that you hit on every guy you pick up, and this week I kind of got lucky with that. Bryce got a good team. He threw literally everything at me. There was one night this week, it was like 9 o'clock. The late game was starting, and his catcher wasn't in the lineup, and he added somebody at 8:45 at night that ended up getting 3 or 4 points. But all in all, I'm glad I got the win. I've played Bry twice now, survived both times, so ultimately I'm happy with that.
Definitely an exciting one. And Paul, what do you have to say about how this one went down?
Yeah, so I'm looking through Cody's team, and I'm trying to figure out who's still actually on his team. It's tough to track after all the trades that happened this week, but 820 points I feel like is almost par for the course for Cody. Even after losing big names, he's still got big names, just as big, if not bigger names. So he's going to be competing. Obviously, he's going to be in it at the end of the year. Bry, he streamed a lot against me. He streams a lot every week. He streamed a lot against Cody. It worked out in some cases, like Cody highlighted, and it didn't work out in some other cases. So it's becoming more of a wild card, I think, for Bry. And I think that has a lot to do with other teams now are starting to get into the streaming game. And when other teams are starting to do it, there's less to pick from. So it's something to look into now when you're playing Bry. Definitely try and stream a guy or two, but at the end of the day, if you think you have the talent that can beat him, maybe you don't need to do it. But still, good win, good week for Cody.
Hen, what do you have to say about this one?
Yeah, I mean, a bit of an unfortunate performance for Bry. Obviously, 706 points would have beaten a good majority of teams, would have beaten everyone but myself, Cody, and John Height. And, Bry's on a bit of a slippery slope right now. Started off the season hot, now is only 5-4-1, starting to fade back. And, there's still time to right the course, and especially because you look at the difference between the 4 seed and the 8 seed. It's really a 2-game difference. But Bry's going to try to find Ryan the ship here. He's kind of struggled. Oh, sorry about that. He's struggled a bit. So, unfortunate the cards didn't fall in his way. And he's had a couple of these close losses. But I think he needs to really start getting back on track, especially if he wants to kind of keep up pace with the other competitor or the other contenders in this league.
And Braxton.
Yeah, echoing a lot of what has been said so far. Good week for Cody, obviously. It's funny, we'd like to point this out every week. Cody got 13 points from Sam Long, and Bry got 21 points from Sam Long. It's kind of funny. But Bry made a lot of moves this week, too, sort of. So we'll be talking about those. But at the end of the day, I feel like this was a really good week for Cody, and there's going to be a whole new set of people coming in to really compete against John Height next week and what's going to be the matchup of the week. So I'm really excited to see how that goes. But if he gets similar performances from guys like Austin Riley, Wander Franco, Gunnar Henderson had a big week for him. That's a new addition we'll talk about in a little bit for sure. But 28 points from Sandy Alcantara in his first start in Bowling Green must have been a good sight to see. Quality start against somebody. I think it was the White Sox. That was pretty good. But yeah, good week for Cody. Unfortunate for Bry, but both teams have got some new people coming up next week that'll make it interesting to watch for sure.
Definitely a good win by Cody. Took down Bry. It was always a tough out no matter who he's playing against. So next matchup we'll do. All right, Braxton, rip the Band-Aid off. So Hartford defeated Division Works 805 to 556. Braxton, I'll let you go first. I'll get my thoughts after everyone else goes, so I'll let you go, though. So talk about our week.
Well, okay, I expected to lose, and I expected it to be a lot like this, but the biggest thing that happened this week was the Ellie De La Cruz call-up. I watched every game. It was very, very just stressful because this is my franchise. If he came up and looked like crap, then I was going to be upset, but he came up, had 63 points this week. I think I got him on Tuesday was his debut, and he had 63 points, so outstanding. He looks like the franchise player that I need him to be, so I'm very excited about that. It led to a lot of the moves that I made later on in the week that we'll talk about, but it was really, really great to see that from him. And I got my 30-point Andrew McCutchen week, which I wanted, which we talked about on the podcast last week, that if I made that one little trade with Connor for Sean Burke straight up, I would just like a 30-point McCutchen week, and that's what I got. And, yeah, a lot of my newcomers did come in and play well to start. I think I got up to middle of the pack scoring over the weekend because of my new addition, so, I mean, I'll take it. Not a great performance, like head-to-head wise, obviously, because I lost by a lot, but I expected it. But it's good to see that the pieces are here now, so I'm happy about that.
Cody, you're up next.
Yeah, I mean, John Height, it's funny, and I know you do this too. I think we talk about it every week, but no matter who I'm playing and no matter who you're playing, I'm always watching your box score. Kind of competing with you in terms of scoring, and going into today, I had almost 100-point lead on you, but you had a big Sunday and closed the gap, finished with 805. Super strong week for you as expected. 455 points from your bats is crazy. Pitching was good at 350, but there is some inconsistencies there, other than Felix Bautista, who just keeps I mean, that's insane. But anyways, you had some good outings from Blake Snell. Corbin Burns looks to have turned a corner here with a big start. As for Bracton, we all give Bracton a hard time, but the future's bright over there. He brought the team's completely different. Big trade week for him. Big to call up Ellie De La Cruz. Things are going to get better with Bismarck, but this matchup was never close. I don't think Bracton expected it to be. He's more angling to take out John Height in the future. That just wasn't going to happen in 2023.
And you're up now.
Yeah, obviously, the matchup kind of went as expected. I think we on the pod were talking about 200, 250 points last week. And, Bracton obviously is trying to do some readjustment at Bismarck. He's also, talking about Breisman on a losing streak. Bracton's also been kind of skidding recently. And, I'm not so entirely sure if he's kind of gunning more for the future. Looks like that, but he also made a couple of win now moves. But, clearly there need to be some change in Bismarck. And I think this is John Height kind of also just showing the potency of his team. Kind of shocking performance. If I had to say someone stood out, which was shocking. Like Lindor doing bad, I get is shocking. He still finished with 51 points. Like a guy batting 250, but home runs really gets our king in this league. And then the Nick Castellanos trade, he's been really surprising for the Phillies. He's been kind of basically the only consistent hitter. And I wanted to get him, but I was looking at my team and I really couldn't find a direct path for him just because of my outfield talent. But I'm glad he found a little home in Bismarck. I forget what day you picked him up, but I mean, he already had 24 points in like half a week. So that's some good signs for the Yargos right there. And just another solid week for Hartford, still undefeated. And Blake Snell also 87 points in two starts, 20 Ks. Pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, very surprising to see Blake Snell do that. I was not expecting that when I traded for him. And Paul, you're up last.
13 points Shane Bieber scored for John Height. 47 points he scored for Bracton. It's been mentioned, but I like looking at those kind of things. That's going to be a pretty common theme, I think, for this week because there was so many trades. Your weekly Shohei Ohtani update, 89 points. Just insane. For Bracton, last week on the pod I had said that John Height could take a vacation and win this week. And, I don't know if he could have taken a vacation because Bracton made a ton of moves. But we'll see what Bracton looks like now. His team is entirely different. Ellie De La Cruz coming up. Shane McClanahan's in. A bunch of other players are in now. Bracton seems like he's in it to win it for this year. But we'll see. We'll see if he can make some more moves. I know he's going to try. I know he's not done. So, but we'll see.
Yeah, and my thoughts for this matchup, obviously, I knew it was going to somewhat happen going in, but I will say, the team difference for Bracton from Monday to Sunday was kind of crazy. Never thought in a million years you would have Julio Rodriguez at the end of it, or Shane McClanahan. So, the instant upgrade. I am very curious to see what your team is going to do in a full week. I think by the time you traded for them, it was already like a 200-point game. So, wasn't really indicative, but you had a pretty good weekend, if I'm not mistaken. You had some guys really step up, and obviously, I watched all of Ellie's at-bats anyway, just because he's, electric, and I was playing against him. For my team, again, the offense has been really carrying me lately. I had a lot of big-time performances. I had a couple of guys on my bench that I could have started. I think like Solera had 35 today. I didn't play him because he was a little bit of a skid. But like you mentioned, Castellanos, I love to pick him up. Again, I traded Teoscar Hernandez away to replace that, and I'll explain why I did that a little bit more later. But yeah, I knew Shane Bieber. I'm so done with him. So I guess it's justice that he did it against me. But the matchup was way far out of contention by then. So again, I don't want to spoil more about that a little bit later. But good win. It is kind of funny though. If I didn't trade Bieber away, I would have outscored you, Cody, for the week. But that's just a what if. But you still outscored me by 16 by the end of it. But anyway, going to the next matchup, let's talk about Hen versus Scott. Clearwater Beach Dogs won 764 to 483, and Hen, you can take the lead on your matchup.
Yeah, I mean, solid performance, 764. Always love seeing that, but really the bats did a lot of the work this week, which is kind of usual for the team. 461, I think it was the most this week. I know at least outscored Cody and John Hyde, so I'm assuming it also outscored everyone else. But if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, I guess. But, I mean, the big storyline, Corbin Carroll, 5 games played. He had 97 points. I mean, dude's been on an absolute tear recently. He's getting, legitimate consideration. I don't know if he'll win, but, I mean, he's over-exceeding expectations. He went 11 of 22 this week with 6 extra base hits, 8 RBIs. He had the 2 home run game, the grand slam. He did great, and then J-Ram, finally, he looks like he's kind of coming back a bit. He had a nice 3 home run performance here this week. I forget when, but he had 84 points as well. And then, obviously, the big thing that's kind of been disappointing, Yordan Alvarez is on the IL with an oblique injury. Hopefully, it's not long-term, but we should be able to at least maintain for the short term. And then, looking towards the pitching side, I mean, obviously, always shout out my boy Mitch Keller, who had a bad first start, but then had an excellent start against the Mets today. And then Zach Wheeler beat his Beach Dog debut, 42 points. Should have gotten the win, but the Phillies blew that game in the 8th inning because of their bullpen. And then also Alexis Diaz had 46 points in relief this week. But overall, good solid week for the Beach Dogs. And like I said, back to 500 now. Obviously, we're striving to be better than that, but it looks like the wins are starting to account for the points I've been scoring now.
Definitely, Paul, you're up.
Yeah, so I'll a little bit echo what Hen was saying. For his offense this week, it was the J-Ram show and the Corbin Carroll show. I mean, those guys are electric. J-Ram had 3 home runs in a game. I think it was Friday. And then the one I wanted to highlight was Alexis Diaz. 46 points this week, 2 saves, 7 strikeouts in 4 innings, got a win as well. It's interesting what the Cincinnati Reds are doing, bringing up Ellie, Spencer Steer, Matt McLean, all these young talented guys, they're in a little bit of an exciting team. And with a 26-year-old closer, he's going to get some opportunities. And that might be a sneaky, low-key, big piece for Hen Dog going into the playoffs. But then as for Chad, there was one player, Josh Naylor, 52 points this week. Josh Naylor is a guy that I was after from Chad this week and in the past. He's a guy, younger guy, 25, I think, first baseman. Outside of the big names, he's just a solid producing player. I don't know if that's a guy that he would want to build with or maybe move, but he's a solid player. And then Braxton Garrett had a big week this week, 15 strikeouts in 10 innings. Same thing, he's 25. Does that fit the timeline of the rebuild for Chad? I don't know, but we'll see.
Definitely some exciting stuff going on for both teams. Cody, you're up now.
Yeah, man, you got to say you're happy for Hen Dog. Good week, 764. He scored that much and lost a couple times this year, so I know he was glad to actually be rewarded for a big-time week. And everybody's mentioned Corbin Carroll and Joe Ram. And, what's kind of scary about this team is Soto and Kyle Tucker have not been what they are. What they can be, that's going to happen. And when that happens, you mix that in with everything else the Beach Dogs have going on. This team is not, for me personally, I hope Penn wins out this season, so he'll be a higher seed in the playoffs, because I do not want to run into this guy, first round of the playoffs as a 6th or 7th seed. As for the Flying Squirrels, Scott, the offense is good. I think he scored, what was he scored? 342. Francisco Alvarez had a big week, 4 home runs this week. He's still getting good production out of guys like Bryson Stott. The offense is fine. I don't think a lot of young guys. Josh Naylor with a 52-point week. Again, like with most teams, the pitching is not great, and it is just really hard to trade for pitching in this league. Most of the good pitching is on playoff teams that are not going to be selling it. So, the future's bright. I think he's got to focus on getting some arms in there to go with his offense, and he can maybe compete a little bit. But, yeah, big win for Hendog. The 764 mark, I expect him to kind of hang around that area, week in and week out, and rack up some wins here as this season moves on.
And lastly, Braxton.
Yeah, just echoing what's been said. It was a good week for Hendog. Obviously, putting up that many points, I believe, was second or third overall in the league, only behind Cody and John Height. But Scott has a lot to be happy about here, especially with Francisco Alvarez and Tristan Casas combining for 87 points. That's his future and his present. And to see them ball right now must be a pretty good sign. Royce Lewis had 24 points this week, not terrible. But, yeah, I mean, Scott definitely has some pieces. We've been talking about it for a couple weeks for people that are trying to compete to go get maybe a Braxton Garrett or a 27-point Colin Ray start or Camilo Doval, 28 points this week. Like, Scott has some pieces that contending teams could be interested in. But, again, we'll see where he goes with it. But there's a lot to be excited about with both teams here as Hendog's starting to climb up like we knew he would be, because his team is really good, especially with these big performances from Jose Ramirez and Corbin Carroll like you guys have been talking about. So, yeah.
Dogs were definitely barking. So let's now turn our attention to Paul's matchup versus Dave. So the Norfolk Tides defeated the Rochester Red Wings 545-478. Paul, you can lead us off.
Overall, scoring-wise, performance-wise, pretty disappointing, I think, this week for me. Adley Rutschman's only got 12 points. I mean, I had Nick Fortis for one day. He scored 7. Adley sat out today, so he only played in 5 games this week. But overall, not great. Rowdy Tellez, a guy I usually count on for 15 to 20 points, didn't score. Nolan Gorman, only 5 points this week. Overall, it was not a great week. I had to rely on Luis Robert, 51. Jack Sawinski, 43, which is a pleasant surprise. And Key Brian Hayes, another 51. So, 337 out of my bats, it's good. It's not going to beat the John Heights and Codys of the world, but it's sustainable. Pitching-wise, it's not even worth breaking it down because half my pitchers are totally different from what the scorebox says. But as for Dave, he made some good moves this week. He bought some players, sold some players. 46 out of Correa, the guy that I used to own, a ton of points. Perez, good amount. Kyle Gibson, 44 on a 2-start week. Kyle Hendrickson, another guy, basically gave him away. Dropped 40 on me today. Or it was yesterday. Dave's roster is much better than his point production says. So it's something to look forward. He's gonna make an upset against one of the bigger teams. I'm calling that for the rest of the season.
Definitely could be in the cards again for Dave. Braxton, you're up.
Yeah, even though Paul was kind of not happy about his pitching, he did get some nice performances from guys that he actually kept, like Jose Barrios, 24, Reed Detmers, 30, Kodai Senga, 39. Those guys are still here, and going on with the additions that Paul made this week could even be scarier in the future if those guys continue to play well. So, I'd like to highlight them. On Dave's side, 46 from Kyle Hendricks and 44 for Kyle Gibson, just absolutely crazy. 38 from JP Sears. He got some good pitching performances. So, again, like Scott, maybe Dave has some more pieces to sell. I know he made a lot of moves, most notably with me, just selling off some stuff, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But he definitely has some pieces here that contending teams should be interested in. But yeah, my best friend Spencer Torkelson had 15 points for him this week, so kind of a down week for him, which is unfortunate. But overall, good win for Paul, and some pieces maybe identified for Dave as contender trade bait. So good week for both, I'd say.
And Cody?
Yeah, Paul got the win, and that's what matters. I know he's not super proud of this week. Offense played well. The good news for Paul is he brought in a lot of pitchers this week, and the pitching needed help. 208 points out of your pitchers is not gonna hang. But I believe that he's kind of righted that ship already. We'll see how kind of the future weeks go for the Norfolk Tides, but I believe the pitching was brought in that's going to, make things right. As for Dave, he had a lot of momentum after upsetting me. That one still stings. But, ever since then, he's kind of been hit with some reality. And this week it caused him to sell off some guys, Matt Gore, Josh Lau. Those are big holes in his team that I don't know how he's going to feel. So, I think Dave's kind of more focused on a rebuild now rather than trying to compete. So, I guess you would just have to expect more performances in the mid-400s moving forward for Dave.
And Head.
Yeah, I mean, Paul's been disappointed on the performance, but, if they say a win is a win, on his seat time, I know he's been talking about him in chat a lot, but Isaac Paredes, 52 points, good performance out of him. He's really been kind of coming up clutch, especially recently. Had a nice, multi-home run game against the Rangers a couple of days ago. It's players like that, especially when you're trying to compete and, you're trying to find these guys on the margins, the diamonds in the rough. Paredes can definitely be a guy, maybe obviously he doesn't maybe put up 52 every week, but finding players like that consistently is how you're going to keep yourself at arm's distance with some of these other top dogs. And then, obviously, Paul got Mackenzie Gore from Dave, and oddly enough, finished with 0 points this week. So, I guess he still felt a bit of a Red Wing in his heart in that performance. And then also shout out to Brian Hayes, former Beach Dog. I always love seeing my former players thrive, even if they're off my team. But then looking at Dave's side, I think someone mentioned it earlier, got some great performances out of Kyle Hendricks, Kyle Gibson, JP Sears, Baca. Obviously a rebuilding team, and I think he still has some pieces that teams could definitely go after. And if for him, it's just about, building up some of that prospect pool, because I think he's a good enough manager to where, we've already seen him beat Cody, where if he plays his cards right, he can still be in position where he's winning, but he has a deep prospect pool that can then get him far.
Definitely the case. It was an intriguing matchup. Paul was able to secure the dub. Let's now head to the second tie of the season, Johnny Lee Memorial League. Tita, the Nashville Sounds tied Homco. Now is his second tie. Kannapolis Cannonballers 655 to 655. Just absolutely wild. We've had 2 ties already, and it's not even July. It's just crazy. And I'll let Cody start this one.
Yeah, crazy matchup here. I think you got to say, even though this is Homco's second tie, it's got to be more disappointing for Tita. Going in against a 1-7-1 team, it was a matchup. He probably felt, he had to win. He should win. And, he didn't take a loss, but a tie's a tie. It's not great. Both teams played well. Tita's pitching actually played very well. I think his bats kind of let him down. Kind of shocking to see that Dansby Swanson in 27 at-bats finished the week -1. Tita's going to need kind of a more complete performance moving forward, which, this team's good. I'm sure he'll get that. As for Homco, the 1-7-2, this team's got 1 win through 10 weeks. Is the best 1-win team I've ever seen in a fantasy league. I mean, I don't know if it's luck, terrible luck. I don't know what's going on there, but, the team's chock full of talent. He's been incredibly patient. He hasn't sold. He hasn't really bought. He's just kind of stuck with what he has. Still waiting to see kind of what move he makes moving forward. I would say a 1-7-2. Not that he's mathematically eliminated, but I would say that his playoff hopes are fading pretty quickly here. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. As for Tita, my advice, do your thing. I don't think, he mentioned a fire sale. I don't think he was ever serious about that. He's 8-1-1. He doesn't need to be fire selling. I'm sure he's going to tinker around a little bit. Maybe get the bats going, move some bats out, bring some bats in, that type thing. But, just a crazy, crazy matchup this week. I think Tita will rebound nicely moving forward.
Definitely a strange one, to say the least. Paul, will head to you.
Yeah, it's hard to break down a matchup where they tie. And Hamko has experience in this, as it's his second tie, which is crazy because it's not like it's a low-scoring tie. I can't remember what the score was for the other one, but it was in the 600s, and this one was in the 600s. And when you score over 600 points, you should reasonably expect to have a chance to win, which it's wild that he's tied twice. And like Cody said, he only has one win, but there is no way this roster represents a team that only should have one win. Bullpen is good. I said it last week. I stand by it. I think Hamko has good arms. 4 points shy of 300 for the week. And then his bats went crazy. And I was wrong on that. I said that he needed help with his bats. But, Yelich scoring 45, Varsho 48, Thairo Estrada 61. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does have the bats. But then he's just got to get lucky at some point. He's got to find a win at some point, and I think he will. But then as for Tita, like Cody said, he mentioned a fire sale. I'm not sure that's the right move, especially he's 8-1-1. I think that's third place right now in the league. There's no reason to fire sale. Don't panic. Stay the course. You got talent, bats, arms. You got it all. Just stay the course, Tita.
Definitely the way moving forward. And Braxton, you're up.
Yeah, echoing what's been said so far, it's kind of crazy to see another tie for Hamko 2 weeks in a row, but even crazier to me, like Cody said, Dansby Swanson only had -1 points. -1 points, 27 at-bats is absolutely wild. He struck out 11 times, but a negative Miles Mikolas start was the difference. And that's absolutely insane. If he just goes positive, that's so crazy to me, just looking at it. And literally it was one team had one move away from winning this week. So it's absolutely crazy to see. But I think you guys nailed it on assessments for both teams. I think Tita is going to be fine, stay in the course. He can compete with anybody in this league on any given week, and the record shows that. The moves show that, and just the way he manages his team, I like what he's doing. I think he's got a really good shot this year, and Hamko too. He's got a ton of assets. A lot of good young prospects and everything. I know he's been being really patient, and like Cody said, he's probably out of the playoff window, but it would be surprising to see him try to sell off some of these guys. Maybe, some of these pieces I think are people that he could have going into next year, like Michael Harris or Dalton Varsho or Glaber or any of these guys. So trades that he does make will be interesting to see, because I think he'll be planning for more of the long term. So it'll be interesting to see who makes the cut really to come with Hamko to the next season or go help a contender out. But I think he's got a lot of really good young arms like Bello and Bibby and Yuri Perez, that he maybe isn't as far off as some others. So.
And lastly, Hen.
Yeah, we talk about this game being a tie, but just shout out Hamko's team from outscored Tita 140 Evan in the Sunday window. Thairo Estrada, 29 points, 2 home run game from him. Christian Yelich also had a home run. He had 18. And he had some great starts as well. Brian Bello had 28 as my crackers. But, the game was close, but that last day, it's crazy the comeback because the comeback he came from because, and even if you look at just around the league, it was the second most points scored in today's window, only 3 points shy of Connor, and obviously having 3 starts does help out in that aspect, but still, I mean, got just enough to at least get the tie, and obviously you want to win, but he has a good team. I think people said this. There's a lot of good pieces I think competitive teams would, want to go after. It's just a matter of will he kind of sell off or is he more seeing who will be in that threshold for the 2024 season. But 359 points from your bats is always solid, and he almost got 300 for his arms. If things work out a bit differently, maybe he does get the win here, but it's kind of hard to say because you can always say that as well for Tita. But, I think Tita at 8-1-1 still obviously a top playoff team. Maybe some tinkering does need to be done, but I can trust Tita that he'll make the right move to get himself back in the win column because I know I trust him as a manager in that aspect.
Definitely some positive to take away outside of the tie. We got 2 more to recap real quick before we head to the deals. We got Smell versus Chad. The El Paso Chihuahuas took down the Oklahoma City Dodgers 561 to 465. Braxton, I'll let you lead off here.
Well, really, Chad won this week both because he owns both teams' first-round picks, so he can't lose. As far as some of the individual performances go, I think Mickey Moniak is averaging Mickey Moniak's averaging 7.5 points per game. It's absolutely crazy. Good waiver hunting from Chad there. There's probably a lot of guys on his team that he added through waivers or just smart adding that he might be able to flip for something here at the deadline coming up. But I really like what both teams are doing here, stockpiling on some young assets. But, I mean, look at Dylan Cease's 30-point game for Smell. That was big that we wanted. Oh, my God. Alek Manoah minus 25. That's insane. I'm just looking at that right now. That's just – he could have won by even more. He would have broke 600, I think. Or no, I can't math. But that's crazy, though, that a lot of people went negative. Ken Waldichuk, too, That's wild. Some old castaways there not playing very well. But good week for both teams. Chad gets his number 1 pick maneuvering, and Smell gets a win to maybe keep him in it here. So there's some reasons to be excited for both teams.
Definitely can agree with that. We'll head to Hen next.
Yeah, I remember on last week's episode, I called this the unofficial first tank bowl of the season, and Chad I guess ended up quote unquote winning it if you take it from that perspective. 465 had a lot of good performance from the past. 307, that's a solid performance. Just the pitching really didn't help out a whole lot. Only 158. Luke Raley finished the week with 44 points, which is pretty surprising. He's had a pretty underrated season thus far, and we'll talk about a bit later that he moved off of Nick Castellanos. And Mickey Moniak, I guess ever since finding his way to LA, he didn't play a whole lot last year, I believe, but now he's gotten the call, but he's getting some more consistent run time. He's been good, and, obviously things didn't work out with him in Philly, but, kind of like how he's now realizing his first overall pick potential, so many years later. And then looking over towards some of the pitching, Paul Blackburn got a nice little 29-point start for him. Adbert Alazzi, got 20 points. And then, Will Smith had a nice 29-point outing relief. And then you're looking at Smell. Julio Teheran, the comeback tour or the resurgence tour, has been looking really nice. He's averaging 21.5 points across his 4 starts. Domingo Germán putting a nice performance at Bracken. I think your math was – I get the mindset with Manoah that if I think he had a 20-point start, even if he had like a 15-point start, the 40-point swing would have given Smell 600 points. So your math was right there, I think. So if he did have at least like a decent performance, then Craig Kimbrell in relief for him, 30 points. He's been on fire recently, and he almost ran into some trouble in the game against the Tigers after they almost blew the no-hitter through 7 with Zach Wheeler, but they managed to get through that. Brett Rooker, 44 points. I know he was hot to start the year, kind of cooled off a bit, but coming back a bit. And then Marcio Dubon, he's been kind of their utility guy. He got 27 points and only 16 at-bats. And then Justin Turner, 51 points. So, I mean, obviously this is the Tank Bowl. Chad ended up winning, but he also has Smells pick, so he kind of won in both aspects. And the fight for the bottom is going to be an interesting one because there's right now, I believe, 6 or 7 teams who are all 3-7. So, that fight for last place is going to be an interesting one.
Definitely will be. Paul, you're up.
So I'll go quick with Chad. Last week I highlighted Jake Berger as a guy to maybe flip. So this week I'll split it between the 2 Tampa first basemen, Luke Raley and Harold Ramirez. They combined for 80 points this week. That's a lot of points. It's all about selling now, probably for Chad, as it has been. A couple guys that really can sell. For Smell, Spencer Steer, I still love him. 45 points. 368 points from his bats. It's a lot of points. I know mindset, mentality is never too late to try and get back in it, try and get that 7 seed. But if not, I understand why and what Smell's trying to do, which is just get younger talent, and I think he's doing a good job.
And Cody.
Yeah, I know. I believe Hen touched on it, but I got to talk about Julio Teheran. I mean, what is this, 2014? I mean, the guy has just been incredible in his 4 starts with Milwaukee. And it's pretty crazy to think the last time this guy was a serviceable arm was 2019. The last time he was a 20-point-per-game pitcher was 2016. And so it's kind of bizarre to see the numbers he's putting up. Maybe a contender is going to want to buy him. How much is there before it runs out? Smell got a win while he was face deep in Vegas and strippers and cocaine, so you got to give him that. That's a big dub anytime you can do that. As for Chad, I think the point at this point is how much can I lose and how quickly. I don't blame him. He's acquiring draft picks. He's focused on the prospects. One thing I want to touch on with Chad's team is Adbert Alzolay. I think he's about to move into the closer role with Chicago. I think, him and Mark Leiter are going to kind of rotate back and forth, but I think Alzolay's the better arm for that. So that's pretty interesting that he has him. The bats played well for both sides. They both got pieces to sell. I will say this about Smell. I don't see a lot of selling going on here. I think Smell doesn't like losing, and he's going to try to, even if it doesn't mean he can get into the playoffs, I think he wants to win as soon as possible. So, he's getting close to 600, working on kind of getting to 600 and staying there. But, for Chad, it's all about racking up L's and prospects.
Yeah, and one thing I want to bring up real quick is Smell only had 10 starts this week, so if he had 2 more, he probably would have cracked that 600 mark, which, again, could be the threshold going forward. But last matchup of the week before we head to the deals, we had Jamie versus Connor, and the Tampa Tarpons took down Connor 631 to 512. Paul, I'll let you lead off with this one.
So you kind of highlighted it at the end of the last matchup, and I'll highlight it at the beginning. 9 starts for Jamie, and he still scored 631. Just tells you exactly how freaking great his team is. 457 points from his bats. His team stacks up with the best of the best in this league. If he can just figure out a way to get another pitcher, or stream a start or 2 if he can find one that he likes, he's going to be over 700 points a week every week, which you're going to win a lot of games doing that, and you're going to win a lot of games in September doing that. So it's still really good week. Corey Seager, 36 points for him. That's kind of a preview for what we're about to talk about. But then as for Connor, I don't want to forget Connor. Jock Peterson, 61 points this week. Absolutely crazy. 2 home runs. Definitely a guy that might be on the move for him. 40 points out of Josh Bell, who I sold to him for a penny. Maybe get double that return. Taijuan Walker's another guy. Pitcher, 30 years old. Probably a piece that a defending team will want to buy. Maybe a team like Jamie. So, Connor's a good owner. He likes wheeling and dealing just as much as the rest of us. I'm sure he'll whip that team into shape.
And Bracken, you're up.
Credit to Connor here for keeping it close. Like we were saying some outrageous stuff last week, like 300, 400 points that he was going to lose by, but it looks a lot better sitting here analyzing it now, where it wasn't that big of a blowout loss. I know a lot of people, I think Cody and Paul actually said it was going to be pretty close this week. But again, 9 points from Jamie, or 9 starts from Jamie. That's been my thing with his team all year. Is like if he could just get to 12, that would be probably another decent amount of points for him, where he would crack that 700-point mark. But he's still got guys like Bobby Witt and Acuna and Tatis, or just straight ballers every week that are great for him. So, I mean, I've always been big on Jamie's team. I think Jamie's team is great. And even though he didn't even have great weeks this week from Garrett Cole, Yu Darvish, George Kirby went negative, like that just shows how great this team can be, putting up 631, 9 starts, and arguably his 3 best pitchers not performing the way they usually do. So we'll see how he does next week, but there's a lot to be excited about for Jamie as the wins keep piling on. But props to Connor for keeping it close.
Cody?
Yeah, this one I got to say, I'll put my biased hat on. I was really rooting for Connor this week. The final score doesn't show how close this matchup truly was. I think it was like Thursday or Friday. This was like a 30-point matchup. And just the when you've got Acuna, Tatis, Corey Seager, Trey Turner's turned it around. I mean, he kind of took off on him on the weekend. But, Connor managed his ass off this week. Jamie slept through the week, but he got the dub. So, I mean, you can't take that away from him. I will say this, as good as Jamie's offense is, 174 pitching points is not going to get it done. This team's good, but if it's going to put up sub 200-point pitching performances, there's going to be a few more losses that kind of creep up on the schedule. As for Connor, what about a 71-point 2-star week for Taijuan Walker? That's just absolutely massive. He got 38 points from Sean Manaea. Listen, Connor took over a bad team. He's doing the best he can. He manages every single week, every single day, trying to give this team a shot to, hurt some feelings and upset some people. So, he's going to be fun to watch. I know, he likes wheeling and dealing. He's going to make moves. He's going to add. He's going to subtract. But, all in all, I was pulling for Connor with the upset here. But Jamie's power was just too much this week.
And lastly, Hen.
Yeah, I mean, the pitching is – we always mention that pitching's been a concern for Jamie, not really getting the starts. But it's interesting. 174 pitching points, 52 of them came from Kevin Gausman. That's almost – that's over 25% of his pitching points coming from one dude alone. And, obviously, I think someone mentioned a Taijuan Walker swap to Jamie. I think Jamie could benefit a lot from that, just a quality arm back end of the rotation who can get you, 18 points a game and just fill up that starter requirement, because I think that's something, Jamie really wants to need. I think if there's any reason why he wouldn't win in this postseason, it's because his pitching is, not necessarily the quality of the top end guys, but just the depth is lacking, and he seems to consistently only get around 9 to 10 starts a week while everyone else is always getting 12. But yeah, also looking at his team, Trey Turner, 61 points. I know he's been struggling the entire year, and he had a great performance. Against the Tigers, had a 2 home run performance, which increased his total to 7. And then he had a nice little performance here today against the LA Dodgers. So maybe he's starting to turn it around. And then another thing, no one really mentioned it, but Pete Alonso's out for, could be a month. That's obviously a big part of Jamie's team. Still has, good talent nonetheless, but losing a guy like that is pretty tough. I know Jazz Chisholm might be coming back, maybe in the next week or two, but that's a tough loss for him because he's been one of the best pitchers. He's been one of the best hitters all year, and then it got confirmed also this week that Jacob deGrom will not only miss this season with the Tommy John surgery, but he'll probably also miss 2024. So, for a team that's really lacking in arms, a guy who was supposed to come in and be a bona fide ace, his MLB career, or at least his time as an ace, is probably over now, which is unfortunate because when he's at his best, Jacob deGrom was the best pitcher in baseball.
Yeah, and again, deGrom out, Alonso out, Jazz out. You also got to remember Chris Sale just got put on, I think, the 60-day IL, or 60-day injured list on Friday. You still got Woodruff out, Dustin May's out, so 4 of his arms are out. So, Jamie needs to get an arm, but again, it's just a matter of finding someone who's willing to give up that said arm. But that'll do it for the matchups for this week. It was an exciting week. I'm glad we got to cover it all. So now for the next portion of the pod, Cody will be taking over the trades discussion. So, Cody, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, interesting week. I think there was 1 or 2 trades this week that we're going to have to dive into here. The first one that kind of set everything in motion was Paul receives Gunnar Henderson. Jamie receives Corey Seager. Paul, what was your thoughts with that move?
So I had been after Trey Turner from Jamie for a few weeks. And, we had discussed back and forth. He wasn't really looking for a package. But then a few weeks ago, I traded for Corey Seager. And Jamie is a big Corey Seager fan. So I messaged him Monday night. I said, could you do something Seager for Trey Turner? And he said, actually, I'd rather move Gunnar Henderson. And me being an Orioles fan, 21 years old, Gunnar Henderson, I said, well, that sounds pretty good to me. So that's kind of what led to that and what led to everything that came off of it.
Okay, I think you cut out there at the end, Paul. Are you still with us?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, the next move that needs to be discussed, John Haidt receives Nick Castellanos. Chad gets 2 prospects and a first-round pick. John Haidt, what was the thoughts behind that move?
Yeah, so once Chad put him up, I know Castellanos had been hot this year. I know the Phillies have been starting to turn it around. A little spoiler to when we preview our matchup, Cody. It sucked that Aaron Judge has been out for a while, so I definitely feel like my team is a little bit more vulnerable with one of my biggest contributors out. Now, I don't know if Nick Castellanos can remotely replicate what Judge would give me on a weekly basis, but I thought it was really necessary. I was also tired of Teoscar Hernandez. He's been so bad this year, and I just like Castellanos a lot better because he can also bat over 300, even though Teoscar Hernandez would strike out 90 times. In terms of the prospects, had to move my actual Hartford Yargo, Drew Romo, rest in power. I'll get you back someday. Did not want to move Xavier Isaac, but before I loaded up my prospect pool this week, that was really all that was left outside of the main ones. So I was fine with that. And then Cody's first in 25, that'll be the latest first, if not the second to latest first possible. So I thought it was a quality move. I now can plateau him, Soler, maybe 1 or 2 other outfielders while I wait for Judge to come back. So definitely necessary because Judge will not be back this week. So Castellanos is going to have to carry a little bit of the load against, the loaded team that is Cody's.
Interesting thoughts there. The next move, this is where the dominoes kind of begin to fall. for the result of the rest of the week. Paul gets Julio Urias, Matt McClain, Alex Bregman, Zach Veen, Chase Petty, and Blaze Jordan. Cody gets Gunnar Henderson and Jared Kelenic. Paul, I'll let you go first. What were you thinking with that big move?
So I never actually had Gunnar Henderson play for my team, which is a bit of a bummer, because I had him for one day, and he didn't play that day. So traded him to Cody, traded Jared Kelenic to Cody. Julio Urias is an ace or borderline ace in this league. Matt McClain's a guy that I've been after for pretty much the entire year this year. Bregman's a guy, third base. Third base is a little bit dry this year. He's a guy that's been really consistent over these last few weeks. I know he started slow, but he's really picked it up. Veen's the top 100 guy. Chase Petty, I like a lot. I like his potential. And Blaze Jordan is the 11-year-old kid that hit 500-foot home runs back in the day, and now he's doing decently well. I think he might climb the prospect ranks a little bit, but my overall thinking on this was, I traded a star in Henderson to a team that already has a star in Wander Franco and Julio Rodriguez and all these players, and it's scary to do that because now Cody, if he wanted to, could just sit on these players for the next decade and just get 1,000 points per bat. It's tough, but what I wanted was Urias, a pitcher, because I needed to build my pitching, and some really talented young guys that I'm looking to build my future on.
Yes. For me, explain my kind of side of this was kind of the kind of move I had been kind of sitting around almost all season and waiting to make. I had kind of been just acquiring as much movable assets as I could. Urias went on the IL for me. He was a guy that I realistically at the beginning of the season had no intentions of moving, but losing him to the IL and seeing that my pitching staff had actually been performing better in his absence, I realized that he was expendable to me. Matt McClain was a guy that I had gotten a trade a couple weeks back that got called up recently, was playing well, but I just believe the fall back to reality is going to be a hard one for him. So I thought, he's a guy I can move. I'm super deep at third base, so Alex Bregman was a guy that I could move. It doesn't lower what any of these guys are. It just meant that they were expendable to me. And then, of course, prospects are trade assets in my mind. So Veen, Petty, and Jordan were guys that I could move. Gunnar Henderson is the exact target that I've kind of had on my plate all season. I know he struggled up to this point, but the kid's 21 years old. I really believe in him and believe that he can kind of be that Wander Franco type bat for me that kind of leads my team in the coming years. And Jared Kelenic is a guy that I'm absolutely in love with. He's just 23 himself. Really, really had some low times in his early career, but he looks a lot better this year. I think the kid gets better every day, every week, every month. So he was a guy that I was definitely excited to get, and just really thought he kind of fit in where I wanted my outfield to go because I had bigger plans that we'll talk about in just a little bit. So the next trade, actually 9 hours later, Paul turns around and trades Julio Urias and Matt McClain to Bra. Paul gets Reed Detmers, Jeremy Pena, Yu Min Lin, and Jefferson Cuero. Paul, what are your thoughts with this trade?
Yeah, so I had said Urias, a guy I wanted to get, pitcher. McClain's a guy I've been after forever. Both of those things are true. I'm not just saying that. But then Bry came to me that morning. He said, how do I get Urias and McClain? Reed Detmers is a guy that I truly do like. I think he is underrated. I know his peripherals may not be the best, but I think he's a guy. He's 23 years old. Had a hot start. I think he had a no-hitter through 8 innings or something last year. when he was only 22 years old. I think the arrow is pointing up on him. Jeremy Pena is another guy. He hits atop one of the better lineups in the league. A good shortstop, 25, 26 years old. Yumin Lin, pitching prospect for the Diamondbacks. I think 19. He struck out, I think it was 13 batters in 5 innings the other day, like a week or two ago. Just a guy that oozes potential, in my opinion. And then Jefferson Cuero, Brewers catcher. I think the heir apparent to William Contreras. I know William Contreras is only, 24 or something. So maybe doesn't stick around in the organization, but definitely a guy I like his bat a lot. And it's just another move where I'm just trying to get assets. Just trying to stockpile assets because I think that's something that'll help me down the road.
Absolutely. The next move, Hendog acquires Ezekiel Duran. Connor gets Isaac Pacheco, Michael McGreevy, and a 2024 second. Hendog, what were your thoughts with acquiring Ezekiel Duran?
So, obviously Ezekiel Duran has really been really the whole entire Rangers team has just been popping off. But Ezekiel Duran has been, a really good hitter thus far, batting .310, almost has an OPS of 900. I like his age. He's only 24 years old. He's got a lot of lineup versatility. I could throw him a third, shortstop, outfield. This is a move that, that can help me both now but for the future. And I thought for the price because, in my opinion, things could change, but I really don't see Michael McGreevy or Isaac Pacheco as, really big impact guys in the majors. They haven't really done much in the minors this year. That could change, but I don't really see them being much impact MLB guys. And a 2024 Bryce second, that's a middle or back end second round pick. And I think Ezekiel Duran is worth that, maybe even being worth a little bit more. So I thought get a guy who has positional utility and then who can be impactful not only for this year but for future as well.
Yeah, you have no idea how close I came to accidentally swooping you on that move. Right as you guys were finalizing that deal, I kind of reached out to Connor about Duran and, kind of threw a small offer at him where he told me, listen, I like your offer, but I've already agreed to a trade with him. And I was like, wow, incredible stuff. But, yeah, good deal there, Hendog. The next move is a move between two guests on the podcast. Paul gets Freddie Peralta. Braxton gets Yusei Kikuchi, Marco Luciano, Zach Veen, and Cesar Prieto. Braxton, I'll let you go. What was your thoughts with this move?
So every piece in this trade I've later traded. So I'll just go tell my thoughts. At the time, I was getting 2 top 20 prospects for Freddie Peralta, which I've done before in a separate trade, in the first Freddie Peralta trade that I made way back. So that was kind of my price, was like two big-time prospects and a replacement pitcher. And Yusei Kikuchi's actually been pitching pretty well in the last couple weeks. So the downgrade from Peralta to Kikuchi landing me Luciano, who I still hold in high regard despite how he's playing right now, and Zach Veen, who I think is definitely going to be up this time next year and balling in Coors Field with the Rockies just being the way that is. And then I got a worst out of it in Prieto. I thought that was a really good deal for me at the time. And again, like what Paul was saying, stockpiling assets was important, but at the time I didn't intend to move some of these guys as quickly as I did. So, but I thought it was a good deal at the time. So.
And Paul, why Freddie Peralta?
Well, so this trade is exactly why I stockpile assets. It's four assets for one pitcher. Maybe it's a lot. Marco Luciano, despite Braxton said it right. He's been struggling this year. Had an injury, late start. When he started, he's been struggling. He's still a top 30 prospect, and I do still value him that way. Same thing with Zach Veen. He's been a little bit better than Luciano, but still maybe a little bit down. He hasn't stolen 60 bases or whatever, as he did one year in the past, or 70, whatever it was. But Freddie Peralta is a guy I really like, a big strikeout guy, which is huge in this league. He's only 26 or 27, and I need pitching. And this was the first domino in a few dominoes where I was able to get pitchers that I not only like, but are young and that I intend to have around for a while.
Absolutely. And here is where the shit hit the fan, ultimately. Cody gets myself. I got Andrew Vaughn, Alex Verdugo, Bryce Elder, Ezekiel Tovar, Brett Beatty, Brooks Lee, and Micah Bell. Braxton got Julio Rodriguez and Ryan Mountcastle. Braxton, I'll let you go. What are your thoughts with this ginormous move?
So, looking at my team, I knew that I just wasn't in a place where I could truly compete because I had a lot of guys with potential, like the guys I included in this trade, but not a real bona fide star until Tuesday when I first saw Elly De La Cruz play. I was like, okay, this guy's legit. I need to surround him with as much proven talent as possible. So I'm going to go get Julio Rodriguez, who I believe is easily a top 5 to 10 dynasty asset that you can possibly own. The guy is insane. Plays in a premium position outfield in our league. You have to have a couple good outfielders to be competitive in this league. And I didn't mind giving up what I did because he's 22 years old. He's a six or 7 point bat at his age. He's going to be great for the next 8 to 10 years, and I'm excited to have that. I don't intend on moving him unless I get more than what I paid for him, which is, as Cody was saying, it was a pretty substantial price. Andrew Vaughn is somebody I've always liked, somebody I probably will find a way to get back at some point because that's just how it is. He always finds his way back to my team. Alex Verdugo, also the same thing. Like both those guys, 5 to 6 point bats. Bryce Elder's been pitching well. He didn't have a great start today, but he has been having a good year. I believe he's above a 20 point per game arm. He's somebody I've always liked. And then Tovar, Beatty, and Brooks Lee and Micah Bell are all guys that I hold in very high regard. I think that Lee and Abel are definitely top 40, 50 prospects. Beatty and Tovar were, upon graduation, right in there in those conversation for top 20. So I paid a steep price. I also got Ryan Mountcastle in here that's going to play first base. So I saw it a little bit as an upgrade at first base, but from Vaughn to Mountcastle to do the rest of this deal. But Julio Rodriguez and Elly De La Cruz are my franchise, and this is going to be something I'm really going to enjoy watching over the next, hopefully, couple years. And it led me to make another huge move later on, which we'll talk about, because somebody became a little more expendable as a result of this trade. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But Cody.
Yes. And for myself, make no mistake about it. I'm fully believe and agree with Braxton that Julio Rodriguez, while may not be top 5, is very much top 10 dynasty asset in this league. But, kind of when I made the Gunnar Henderson, Jared Kelenic move, I had kind of already been contemplating trading Julio Rodriguez. I felt like my team needed depth, and with depth, I could use that depth, replace Julio Rodriguez, which I did later this week, while also keeping some of the depth intact. And when Braxton threw some of the names at me, all these names that he threw at me were guys that I weren't really viewing for how are they going to do with my team, but they were how am I going to be able to shop these guys while I'm going out and getting what I truly want around the league for Julio Rodriguez. And so that's, I felt like all the guys that I got, were guys that were going to be sought after, people were going to be interested in. Brooks Lee is probably the one asset that I got here that I have no interest in moving. I want to keep and kind of let him come up. Everybody else, this was one of those. I took a risk here because, what if I take up all these guys and I'm higher on them than everybody else is, and I can't make moves. that I want to make. But as we'll get to in future trades, I believe I traded every single piece I got here already except for Brooks Lee and Micah Bell. So, and for me too, I'll say, Ryan Mountcastle was a guy that I was kind of really wanting to get rid of. I had been shopping for a while. Nobody was interested. To be able to throw him in here and get Andrew Vaughn to replace him, in my opinion, was a big upgrade for me. Mountcastle had really been struggling. Paul had mentioned to me that he could be kind of drifting into a platoon role at first base, so he was a guy I tried to get out from under. So, odd trade for a 9-1 team to trade Julio Rodriguez, but again, I just had bigger plans there, and in my estimation, as the weekend went on, I think that they kind of worked out the way I hoped they would. The next trade was Braxton gets Josh Jung, Dave gets Tamar Johnson, Marco Luciano, Zach Veen, and Jackson Jobe. Braxton, what are your thoughts with this trade?
So, we've mentioned a couple times in this podcast that third base is a kind of a dry position this year. But I've been paying attention to what's been going on in Texas with the Rangers, and Josh Jung being an integral part of one of the league's best offenses definitely stood out to me, especially given his age. I think he's 25, 26 area. So he fits the timeline of what I'm trying to do. But Dave's a shrewd negotiator, man. This took time, and he was not going to settle for anything less than 4 top 100 prospects here. And I was just like, all right, man, I got to do it because – I'm trying to surround Elly De La Cruz and Julio Rodriguez with as much young talent as possible here. Tamar Johnson is undisputedly, in my opinion, the best second base prospect in baseball. He's just 19 and is not going to be up for a while, and I couldn't afford to wait on that. Marco Luciano, again, I like him, but I had a lot of shortstops, and if I was going to make this trade, I was going to plan on running Jung at third and Elly at short. So he became a little expendable. I didn't really need that. And I didn't anticipate to make another big trade later on in the night. So I thought trading Zach Veen wouldn't come back to bite me. But, I gutted my outfield prospects later on, as we'll talk about. But at the time, I thought, okay, I have 4 of them. Zach Veen can go. And then Jackson Jobe, I wasn't going to let Jackson Jobe from stopping me from getting Josh Jung. Even though I like Jackson Jobe, I think he's a good prospect. He might even be up for Detroit as early as next year. I think that he was an expendable piece to get a big-time bat like Josh Jung when my focus was to fix the offense around Elly. So I like the deal. I'm going to keep Josh Jung for a while. I think Dave killed it. Well, Dave made another couple big trades later on, which we'll talk about. But I think this was a very, very big week for him overall in terms of where the team's going. He got a lot of really good pieces, and those 4 are going to help him certainly.
Absolutely. The next move Braxton made was he acquired Josh Lau. Dave gets Zach Neto, Chase DeLauder, Gavin Cross, and Ryan Papaya. Before, Braxton, you go here, I just want to add, I was very much in on Josh Lowe here. Braxton beat me out. That was the domino when I told you that I made the Julio Rodriguez trade, and I took on a lot of risk because guys may not want my guys. When I made Julio Rodriguez trade, I was 100% headstrong. Josh Lowe is who I'm trying to get. That's who I want to replace Julio, and I immediately went to Dave. We had a conversation back and forth all day. Braxton kind of came in. He gave Dave what he wanted, and so it kind of changed what I needed to do from there. But Braxton, I'll let you go. What was the thoughts behind acquiring Josh Lau?
It was funny. Josh Lau was not my main focus. My main focus was trying to get Luis Robert from Paul, but we kind of had on and off discussions. So I wanted another outfielder to pair with Esteury Ruiz and Julio Rodriguez. So I was looking for that bona fide outfield too, which Josh Lau has been this year. I ended up moving Zach Neto, somebody I really, really like. But again, the plan was to run Jung at third, Elly at short. I didn't really need Zach Neto. He wasn't gonna play utility for me or anything. And then, like I said, 2 outfield prospects. Again, Chase DeLauder, Gavin Cross, my Virginia boys. I like them. They're going to be really good. And then Ryan Papayat is an arm that a lot of people have been high on, including me. So, again, 4 big-time assets like this for Josh Lowe. Dave gets 8 really, really good pieces for Lowe and Josh Jung. He killed both trades, I think. But we both accomplished what we needed to accomplish at the end of the day. But good for both of us, I feel like. So Josh Lowe is also a very big domino that fell just like under an hour later, which we'll talk about. But these trade nights just keep getting wilder and wilder. But I think both of us got what we needed. So yeah.
I'm glad you guys got what you needed, and it sent me into a tailspin of depression. But the next trade we will talk about, Paul gets Mackenzie Gore. Dave gets Gavin Stone, Andy Pages, Bo Naylor, and Adele Amador. Paul, what's your thoughts with acquiring Mackenzie Gore here?
So before I get into that, I'd like to ask Braxton a quick question. Hey, Braxton, do you think that Zach Neto and Ezekiel Tovar will still both be top 5 shortstops in 2 years?
Yeah.
As you own 0 of them now?
Yeah, I think that Dave is going to have a really good piece there, and I don't know off the top of my head who ended up with Tovar. Was it you? You still own him? Yeah. I think both of you guys are going to get really big pieces with them. So I'm not going to retract that statement. I think that both of those guys are going to be legit. Just couldn't afford to wait on them if the goal was to try to compete this year. So
I like it. I like that you're standing by your take.
Yep.
So to get to this trade, and just a brief overview, I guess. Dave got 12 players in the span of 2 hours, that all of which at some point were top 100 prospects. That is absolutely nuts. I mean, Dave pulled out a masterclass. I think it was Friday night. Just 12 prospects. Stone, Pages, Naylor, Amador, all right now. If you look at MLB's top 100, they're all there. DeLauder, Gavin Stone, Papayat, they're all there. DeMar Johnson, Marco Luciano, Bean, and Joe. I don't know if Job's there.
Job's there.
I mean, they're all the top guys. So he just did a really good job. Obviously, he's in for the rebuild, but it's going to be a quick rebuild if those guys all can pan out. But specifically for the Gore trade, Mackenzie Gore for me is a guy that I've been eyeing for a month or two. You know, he's really starting to get his career going after a slow start his couple of years in the league. I think he has potentially ace potential. So paying Stone, who obviously we know what Gavin Stone's story is this year. Pages is a guy, he got shut down, I think, for the season with a shoulder injury. Bo Naylor, I have Adley, don't need catchers. And Amador. Amador is the guy I did not want to give up. I love Adele Amador, but, I mean, I have Jackson Holiday, and I have now, I mean, I didn't then, but I have now Ezekiel Tovar, and I think both of those guys end up better than Amador. But still, Dave, he was set on having Amador in the deal, and he got him because he's a good negotiator, he's a good owner, he knows what he wants, and he goes and gets him.
Absolutely. And real quick, we'll touch on this small trade. Not a lot to say about it, but Cody gets Jeremy Pena. Paul gets Brett Beatty. I'll explain. You know, I mentioned when I did the trade with Julio Rodriguez, I was acquiring assets to move. When I did that trade with Braxton, I immediately got like 7 or 8 different PMs about Ezekiel Tovar, none of which I got for Brett Beatty. So I thought if I can flip Brett Beatty for a shortstop that I like to be on my bench as a backup to Wander, I want to do that, which will make Tovar expendable, that I can use him in a package for something else that I'm trying to do. So that's why I made the Pena for Beatty swap. Paul, I'll let you go real quickly.
I just like Beatty. I've liked him for a while, too. I think he's a really good third baseman. Like I've said, third base is dry. And I think he's a guy that's going to be really good. I said it before, Jeremy Pena is really good, too. So I think it's a good player for a good player.
Yeah, Absolutely. Okay, and the next trade, pretty interesting deal here, I have to admit. Bragton gets Shane McClanahan, Bobby Miller, Alex Verdugo. Cody gets Josh Lau, Hunter Brown, and Jonathan India. Bragton, I will let you go first. What were your thoughts with this trade?
So I've been needing a bona fide ace for a very long time. So, I mean, I was kind of just sitting and reflecting this week where it's just like, okay, what do all these contending teams have? They have a superstar. They have 2 or 3 superstar bats under the age of 25 for the most part, and 2 or 3 bona fide aces, like for sure things, bona fide aces. So Shane McClanahan was somebody I was interested in, but honestly, Cody came to me with this one. I didn't think that this was even anywhere near a realm of possibility, and Cody's like, hey, you want to do something big? Had a framework around Josh Lau, Hunter Brown for McClanahan. We talked about Bobby Miller a little bit, and he wanted Verdugo in there. But moving Jonathan India was tough because I didn't have a second baseman, and second base is really dry here too, just like third base. So, he's on an up-and-coming team like the Reds that I really liked, but I had always said I would move him for a stud pitcher. I mean, so the way I look at this is Shane McClanahan for Hunter Brown, which, I mean, I love Hunter Brown, but if he's 3/4 what Shane McClanahan is, that would be huge. But now I actually have McClanahan, so that's how I view that. Then I would say India for Bobby Miller, which I also like because I'd always told everybody India is available for the right arm, and getting somebody like Bobby Miller's had a big-time start to his career made me pretty happy just for the downgrade from Lau to Verdugo. So at the time it made sense. I'd later move Verdugo, which we'll talk about, but I was really, really happy to get McClanahan, who's a bona fide ace, and Bobby Miller, who at this pace could be that bona fide ace, passing the torch, Clayton Kershaw to Bobby Miller over there. I mean, he looks legit. I think he's averaging like 34 points or something right now, 30-something. At the time of his trade, he had a 36-point start for me, I believe, this weekend after this trade. So off to a great start with Bobby Miller, but I'm really enjoy these 2 arms that I'm getting here. So I'm hoping that those guys can be these arms that I'm going to need if I'm really going to be serious about competing here going forward.
Absolutely. And for me, I'm not crazy, so I'll kind of explain this. There's a lot of layers to this trade for me. First one being when Bragton acquired Josh Lau, he had me. He could have done whatever he wanted to with me. I would have gladly allowed him, and then took Josh Lau and went on my happy way. He was a guy that, like I said, ultimately when I moved Julio Rodriguez, I was like, I got to go get Josh Lau. I had talked Dave into moving Josh Lau. I just did not foresee him moving him to someone else. So basically I had to get creative. I knew Bragton is not the type of owner that you can just throw value at and he's going to take a deal. He's only going to want certain specific pieces because of the way he values players. 80% of the league is unownable to him. So I knew I had to be really creative here. And so this is kind of the way that I looked at it. Shane McClanahan's an ace. I think he's one of the top 3 or 4 pitchers in baseball. Downgrading from him to Hunter Brown, though, I always talk about good downgrades. And I think that is a perfectly survivable downgrade for me. When pitching is my strongest aspect of my team, going from Shane McClanahan to Hunter Brown was something that if I'm going to move Shane McClanahan, that was the type of pitcher I would need back. And so that made moving Shane McClanahan okay in my mind. So I'm good with that part. Then I've got to figure out, okay, so now to do that, to take that downgrade, I'm going to get Josh Lau. So I wanted to get Josh Lau, and I really needed Jonathan India. Nico Horner started this season on fire, but he had really been scuffling lately. And I was looking at my team. At the time, I didn't even have a backup second baseman. I really just had Nico Horner, and I thought that's definitely a weak spot in my team. So I went and I looked at second baseman. Of course, there's Ozzie Albies available, but I look and Jonathan India is actually outscoring Ozzie Albies in less at bats. So I was like, okay, 26 years old, up and coming Reds team. That's a guy that I want. And listen, in order to do that, I had to move Bobby Miller. Bobby Miller was a guy that I got in the Dylan Cease trade with A.J. Smith-Shawver. And actually, because of that trade is why I was able to do this trade because, again, pitching's my strongest spot on my team. I can move Bobby Miller here. I can call A.J. Smith-Shawver up. I feel like that's a wash in that department. I feel like I took a good downgrade from Shane McClanahan to Hunter Brown, and then I got Josh Lau, who I think is on the cusp of becoming a Kyle Tucker type bat, in Dynasty. And so it was again, I make risky moves, but like I said, once Bracton got Josh Lau, it put me in that position to come to him and say, hey, whatever I've got to do to make it work. And then I look and he has Jonathan India, and then it's like, okay, I've really, really got to make this work. So that's what I did. The last part of that trade that kind of mattered to me because I looked at this before I pulled was matchups for next week. I'm playing John Haidt next week. I've got to win. Shane McClanahan has one matchup next week, and it's on the road in San Diego. Hunter Brown has got 2 starts next week. Both of them are at home. One of them is against the Nationals. The other one is against the lowly, pathetic Mets. So, again, I'm making a downgrade, but I think, maybe even in the next couple of weeks, it's not even so much of a downgrade. So that's kind of the way that I looked at that trade, very complex trade there. The next move we will talk about, probably the most controversial move of the week, I would say, is John Haidt gets Jackson Chourio, Patrick Sandoval, and Yusei Kikuchi. Bracton gets Shane Bieber. John Haidt, I will let you go first. Why this move?
Yeah, so I'm glad I could finally speak up about this. So going into the week, I had no intention of really changing my rotation. I had a good thing going. One thing I have noticed the last again for him, his last 7 starts, is Shane Bieber I'm talking about has not been throwing strikeouts. I've been hearing, negative things. He's starting to slow down a little bit. He's not what he was, and I don't think he's ever going to get back to that. I think he'll still be good, and obviously he was good for Bracton in this one start, but I never thought in a million years that Bracton would actually trade Jackson Chourio away this soon. And for me, obviously I'm in win now mode. I think I could push for a chip the next 2 to 3 years with this team. But now, at the same time, with this move, I've been able to have myself where, okay, I have this team now. Next year, at the minimum, I'll have Volpe and Chourio up if I keep Chourio. There's no way, Bracton, you can correct me if I'm wrong in a little bit, but I don't think this trade is made this week. It's definitely not made in the offseason because Bieber's already 28. To this day, I'm still shocked that it actually happened. I'm not going to lie. I don't think it would have happened if Bracton didn't make some of those really good moves he made earlier because, he got McClanahan, he got J-Rob. That was just nuts. He pulled all that off in one day. And I still didn't think Chourio would be expendable if he had, he could build around him, Ellie, and J-Rod at that point. So, very pleasant surprise. I usually don't make big moves like this. If my team is rolling, I'm 10-0. And in terms of playing Cody this week, one thing I've kind of already come to a conclusion about is, obviously Cody's got a lot of good matchups this week. Strider's got 2 starts. I don't think Bieber was going to help me this week anyway. And I know the next time I potentially play Cody, I won't have, for this week at least, I won't have Judge. I won't have Erod, Fried, or Rodon. So that's 3 of my aces plus my best outfielder right now. So I already know it's going to be already an uphill battle this week. I'm kind of expecting to lose. I still think there's a shot I win. But, if there's a chance for my team to really take add another layer to this team already, that's a 10-0. I couldn't pass up on it. I can't pass up on Jackson Churio when he's made available. He's a top 2 to 3 prospect in baseball. His ceiling's, out the roof. So, and now I have him, potentially trade packages before the deadline. But if not, I now have a really good core of him and Volpe coming up with already these, Hall of Famers on my team. So that's the way I look at it. And, I'm not putting too much, grain and salt that Bieber finally had a good start today. I don't think he is what he is anymore. He's still going to be good. He'll still probably be a 20-point per game pitcher. But he's had a lot of rotten eggs lately. I can't afford that. And in terms of the other part, actually, I'll mention real quick. Sandoval and Kikuchi, I needed pitchers back. Just make the starts before I get these guys off the IL. Sandoval, I know he got rocked by the Mariners. Threw a ton of strikeouts. I could give maybe a 15-point performance. I'd be fine with it. Kikuchi, like Brad mentioned earlier, he got from Paul. He's had some good starts lately. Again, this is a buffer period until Rodon could come back early July. Fried will be back around the All-Star break. Erod will be back soon. So once those guys come back, Bieber, I'd have to pick to even start him when they're all healthy anyway. So the way I look at it, and very excited that I now have Jackson Churio, which I never thought I'd get at the beginning of the season.
And Bracton, let us know, is Jackson Churio just too old at 19? What was the thoughts here with this move?
Well, John Height, you were right when you were saying we would never have made this trade before the season. Like, no shot. I was keeping Jackson Churio forever. But what have I always said about Jackson Churio, though? I was like, oh, yeah, if Jackson Churio could just become Julio Rodriguez, it would be the greatest thing ever, right? Now I actually have Julio Rodriguez. So I was like, okay, like, now I can actually explore a trade here because I already have Julio Rodriguez. I don't need – I like, he could come up and not be Julio Rodriguez, and then I have all for nothing there. Like, the gamble didn't pay off. That's what we at the end of the day, a prospect is, right? Like, there are some guys that are first sure, like Ellie is, and Jackson Churio probably will be that guy. But what if he's not? Like, getting a guy like Shane Bieber right now, who I believe still is an ace, showed it today that he still has some stuff that he's got. And potentially a real life trade that's possibly coming up to a team that could be on a team like Baltimore, who could really use like a Shane Bieber, or Houston or the Dodgers or somebody really good could go after this guy and put him in a better situation than he is now. There's a lot to like about him. And I love Jackson Churio. I always will. He's a dog. John Haight's got a really nice player going forward here, but I guess having the stability of knowing that I've already got my superstar outfielder it made me realize that, like, I don't need to wait and see if he is that kind of guy. I could get something I could use now, and you know how pitching is in this league. So turning Jackson Churio into Shane Bieber, I thought was a good deal. Although I had some flip-flops in my head after the deal was made. Bieber's start today definitely eased that down, and I think he's only going up here on out. And I'm a Sandoval fan, even though he's been stinking it up recently, and every time I talk about him, I hear the guy can't strike anybody out, or he keeps getting rocked, and he does. So, getting out from under that and just getting rid of the whole idea that Patrick Sandoval is a good pitcher that I like now I don't have to think about him anymore because I don't own him. So that there's some there's some bonus to that. And Kikuchi is good. And I know John Haight's saying there's a buffer. He'll probably be able to flip him if his buffer period ends and he wants to get some assets for them. I'm sure people will trade for them, maybe not at a reduced price than what I would have tried to sell Sandoval for 5 assets. Nobody was going to give me that. I know Connor offered me 5 fourth-round picks in the future, so John Haidt, you can have that if you really want it. 5 future fourth-round picks in 2026 and 2025 for Sandoval is definitely on the table probably. So I like Shane Bieber, like I said, so we'll see where it goes. But a pitching staff of both Millers, except Mason, we're going to work on that. We got to get all the Millers. 2 Millers, Shane Bieber, McClanahan, and Josiah Gray. I like that. I like where the staff's going. So controversial trade, yes, but good trade, I think, also yes as well. So.
Wait, Cody, Wait, Cody, can I respond to that real quick? I just have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Bracton, I really want to know this because you kind of contradicted yourself, at least for one part of the response. Before you traded Chourio or had any intention of trading Chourio, you've said for the longest time he was a surefire thing like Ellie, and now that he's not on your team, you're now saying he's just a chance at J-Rod. He wasn't a surefire thing, but you'd said that the entire season of you owning him. So I was just curious what changed from now he's not, even though he's the second-ranked prospect in baseball.
No, I still think he is. I just said I still think he is. I'm just saying now that risk that I was going to take is now doesn't even need to be had because I have the guy who I wanted him to turn into. That's all I was saying.
Yeah, but who's going to play with J-Rod in your outfield?
I really like where Estuary Ruiz is at. I think he is somebody that I really just enjoy owning because he's electric like Ellie De La Cruz is. He can steal bases, he can hit, he does everything I need him to do. And I'm not done making trades. I think I don't remember who I got, but I got somebody else I was excited about. Oh yeah, TJ Friedel. I'm really excited about him too. But having Julio Rodriguez to me feels like two outfielders, like he's that good, and it feels like I've got like two guys in one there. So every outfield I'm starting now really has four guys instead of three in my mind. It's because Julio's that good. So I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about Chourio. I love the guy. I still think he's a surefire guy. But now I don't even have to have the thought of him not panning out, because I've got the guy who I wanted him to turn into, and I need the pitcher now. So I guess it worked out. The timing worked out. If I like I said, if I don't get Julio Rodriguez, I'm not trading Jackson Chourio. It's just how it is. If it's any other outfielder in the league, probably, unless it's like Acuna, obviously. But like, if it's any other lesser outfielder in the league, I don't trade Jackson Chourio. It's just the one guy who I wanted him to turn into. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, it's just interesting. I was just curious.
Like. Yeah. So.
All right. And the next trade was Cody receives Luis Arias. Paul gets Ezekiel Tovar, Ben Brown, Dustin Harris, and a 2025 second. Paul, I'll let you go. What was your thoughts with this trade that took 3 weeks to complete?
That's an understatement. I love Luis Arias. When I got him from Bracton, I mentioned on this podcast how much I love Luis Arias. He's the guy you're guaranteed pretty much 3 to 4 points a day. And he can even have a 5-for-5 game where he scores 27. I love him a lot, but at the same time, I recognize in today's day and age, having a 400 batting average is tough. And I think there's going to be a little bit of regression. I think he's going to be more of a 350 hitter. And a 350 hitter is great, but when you're not hitting home runs and when you're not scoring a lot of runs or hitting a lot of RBIs, it takes a toll on your point production. I think he's going to regress a little bit. I hope not, because I like the player and I love watching him play. But that was my thought process. As for what I got, Ezekiel Tovar, I really like Ezekiel Tovar. I'm not going to make the bold statement of top 5 shortstop that Bracton did, but I really like him a lot. Only 21 years old, already in the big leagues. And to have a 1-2 punch with him and Jackson Holliday potentially at the end of next year or 2025 is extremely appealing to me. I've gotten inquiries about Ezekiel Tovar since getting him, and I've turned everybody down because he's a guy that while his points may not be there this year, I really think as he gets adjusted to big league pitching, I think he's going to be an all-star. And the other big piece was Ben Brown, Cubs pitcher, striking everybody out at AAA. I think he'll be up with the Cubs hopefully by the end of this month. But they might go the reliever route, kind of like they did with Justin Steele. I think Hendricks started as a reliever too, but the Cubs like bringing their pitching prospects up and putting them in the bullpen, and that's fine. I can call him next year, but he's got stuff that I think plays really well and will play really well at the big league level. Plus, it's just at the end of the day, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm just acquiring assets. That's what the name of the game is, because if you acquire enough, you'll get a guy like Mackenzie Gore.
Absolutely. And for me, I joked about this trade talks went on for 3 weeks. It didn't quite go on that long, but these trade talks did go on well before I got Jonathan India. And a little backstory here, I kind of looked around where my team was at the beginning of the week before any of these moves were made. I kind of identified where my weak spots were, where I needed to improve, what assets I had to use to improve those spots. And like I said, second base was glaring for me. Nico Horner is fine, but I don't think he is exactly what I wanted in the position. So I got second base, and I mean, second base is a wasteland in fantasy. I mean, you've got Simeon, Albies, India, Arias, maybe Nico. It really starts to taper off after that. Ketel Marte's been fine. Gleyber Torres has been fine. But my point being, there's not a lot out there. So India and Arias were two guys that I kind of identified as guys I wanted. I wanted one of them. Well, I'm talking with Paul about Luis Arias. There's a ton of competition at this time for Luis Arias. And so I kind of backed off. Then the thing happens with Bracton pretty quickly where I get Jonathan India. Well, Paul kind of circles back to me about Luis Arias. And my first thought was, I got India, I don't need him. But then I started looking and I thought, what better position to be super deep at than the weakest position in fantasy baseball, second base. So, I made the move I made for Julio Rodriguez to acquire assets to be able to make moves exactly like this one. It gives me a guy hitting 400 in my utility spot, consistent 7, 8, 9 points every single game that he plays. I feel like he's Stephen Kwan, but actually good at baseball, which just, really useful to me. Tovar was expendable when I made the Jeremy Pena trade. Ben Brown was devastating to lose as a Cubs fan. I think that Paul really got a guy that's going to be a valuable pitcher in this league for a long time. Harris in the second really didn't mean a whole lot, but again, they're assets. But yeah, I just felt that having India, Arias, and Nico Horner at second base with Miguel Vargas, who also has second base eligibility, really puts me in a spot of, one, I've got production for sure at that position when a lot of teams don't, and two, a lot of teams need a second baseman. Who are they going to come to if they need one? I've put myself in a good spot to be that guy. So that's why I made that move. The next trade we'll talk about, Bracton, we'll go real quick on this one. You received Christopher Morel. Tita gets Ryan Mountcastle and Lance Lynn.
Yeah, like you're saying, second base is a barren wasteland, and Christopher Morel is one of the few guys that actually fit my age limit and were actually playing pretty well. So Tita and I were talking for a while about it being a spec-based deal, but then we settled on Mountcastle and Lynn. But Christopher Morel had 24 points after this trade, which I believe was like only 2 days worth of games. So off to a good start with me, and I'm happy to have him. He's also dual eligibility, so it made sense to get him to play my second base position after trading Jonathan India. So it may be a little downgrade for now, but excited to see where he goes from there.
And Paul, real quick, you traded Brady Singer to Bry. You got Brian Wu in a fourth. What's the thoughts real quick?
Bry said he wanted to get a starter yesterday. Brady Singer was starting against the Orioles yesterday because he still had hopes of trying to beat Cody. Obviously, it didn't work out to beat Cody, but Brian Wu's a guy I really like as well. Already up with the Mariners. striking out. I think he had 11 strikeouts in 2 starts, something like that. Just a really solid guy. I like all of the Mariners prospects pretty much, and he's just another one for me.
Okay, Paul, trying to help other teams beat me. Mental note taken.
It's very, very futile as it turned out.
Yes. Next deal, real quick, Bracton, you immediately turned around and acquired Ryan Mountcastle back. Busy week for the Mount Man. You gave Kevin Parada, Daniel Espino, and Gunnar Hoagland for Mountcastle. What was your thoughts there?
Yeah, like I said before, the Morel deal was for a while going to be a prospect-based deal. So then Tita hits me with he'll do 3 specs for Mountcastle. So at the end of the day, it basically was 3 specs and Lance Lynn for Christopher Morel, which I'm still fine with because that was what I wanted to do originally. So we'll run with Mountcastle at first and Morel at second for a little while. That's the plan.
And Espino is in hospice care. Prayers for him and his family. The next trade worth talking about was Bracton gets TJ Friedel and Dre Jameson. Paul gets Alex Verdugo, Richard Fitz, and Jackson Rutledge. Paul, I'll let you go first. What's the thoughts here?
I like Friedel a lot. I like Verdugo a lot. To me, they're pretty similar in value. Dre Jameson is a guy that I traded for. He borderline top 100 prospect coming into this year. He's up with the Diamondbacks. He's in their bullpen right now. Probably a guy that's going to get switched back to the rotation, I would say, sooner than later. But I certainly think he was worth 2 worse, which is, in my opinion, what Fitz and Rutledge are. So a fairly even deal, I would say. I would caution Bracton, maybe Friedel gets moved out of the starting lineup if they have to put like Deere or Kevin Newman or somebody in the outfield, just because they have so many infield prospects. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but it's just something to keep a note of.
And Bracton, your thoughts with this deal?
Yeah, for now I see Friedel leading off, one of the best young up-and-coming teams in baseball. They're really fun to watch. He's been playing well when he has been on the field. I view him and Verdugo as about the same. And then basically what Paul was saying on Jameson for the 2 worst. I think Jameson is somebody I can afford to take a chance on right now. I don't have a lot of pitching at the moment. I have good pitching, but not a lot of it. So getting a guy like Dre Jameson who also fits my age window for 2 worse, and he's up right now, it's something I'm willing to take a chance on. But I'm a big TJ Friedel believer, especially if he's batting leadoff on this particular team. So,
absolutely. And the next trade, I think, caught most of the league off guard. None of these players were mentioned to be on the trade block or movable. Hen gets Grayson Rodriguez. Paul gets Taj Bradley and Colton Cowser. Hen, I'll let you go. What's your thoughts with acquiring Grayson Rodriguez?
So I will say, you mentioned no one's on the trade block. I'm a guy, obviously there are players who I have untradeable, and I've kind of made that clear, but if someone always comes out to me about an offer, I'll usually either go out to someone or call out someone about trade block. I'll post one every once in a while, but I'm not actively updating one, so that was kind of adjusting that. But you know, it was interesting because Colton Cowser, I got him in the Sandy deal like last week, and I obviously he's a good prospect, but just looking at my team right now, it was kind of hard envisioning him finding a spot. I mean, I already have Carroll, Tucker, Soto, Alvarez with PCA, Walker, and Drew Jones under the wing as well, and just Colton Cowser just it's kind of hard envisioning him being better than a majority of those players, even at his peak. So I knew I could flip him for something, and I originally wanted to move him for Luis Arias because, you know, obviously, you know, I have Max Muncy right now who has second base eligibility, but I wanted someone else, and also I felt like regardless he could just be slotted as a utility bat for me, but he ended up going with Cody, and then Paul circled back to this today saying, what else did you want for Colton Cowser? And I said, you know, I know a lot of your O's guys aren't really available, so I'll take a look at that. And he said the only ones not available were Adley and Jackson Holiday, and I think, well, that means Grayson Rodriguez is technically available. We originally had a deal for Andrew Abbott, but then that fell through, and I said, well, Andrew Abbott and Taj Bradley, I was really close on them originally. Obviously Bradley's younger, and I think the ceiling's a bit higher, but the Rays, it's always a bit weird with their pitching. I mean, even still, as good as Bradley's been, he still hasn't recorded a quality start yet, despite the fact he probably could have done it at least a couple of times. But Kevin Cash always likes to pull his starters maybe a bit too early, which frustrates fantasy owners. But I think the upside on Rodriguez is so high. Even if he really doesn't play this year, he's someone I can hold on to. And then for 2024, then maybe that's when he'll get the ground running along with Andrew Painter as well. And for the other starter spot, I can actually now call up Andrew Abbott. He'll slot in where Taj Bradley was before, and I can actually get him in this rotation, which I've been looking to do for the past week or so.
Absolutely, and if you are interested in a swap, we can always have a conversation at some point. Paul, what's your thoughts with this trade?
Yeah, so Ken kind of said most of it that he came to me about Grayson when I had said that he would possibly be available. The original deal that we had said was Abbott, Cowser, and Tyler Locklear for Grayson. I like Andrew Abbott a lot. He's obviously had a really good start. He's going to be a big strikeout guy. Not entirely sold on his command, though. He might be walking a few too many guys. So I tried to switch it to Taj Bradley. I love Taj Bradley a lot. I really, really like him a lot. I think he's probably the best pitcher I have on my roster right now, next to Senga. And I'll gladly find a place on my roster for a guy like Colton Cowser because he's an absolute stud. He'll be up probably by the end of this month, and he'll be up on my team not long after that because he's a guy, I think he's a 5-tool guy. I think he's going to be probably not in Rookie of the Year conversations just because it's a little bit late now to get into that game. But he's a guy I covet, and I don't envision. I moved him once already to get Luis Robert from Cody, and immediately I regretted doing it because I like him a lot. I don't envision myself moving him again.
Interesting. And John Height, real quick, you see me on the schedule and you start selling for prospects. You get Oswald Peraza and Alex Ramirez. Tita gets Teoscar Hernandez. What was the thoughts with that move?
Well, I had just traded for Nick Castellanos, obviously, earlier in the week. I had a ton of outfielders. I actually had a bench at Castellanos, Soler, and Hernandez. Hernandez has been a guy I've been trying to trade for a while. He's been dog water this year. He hasn't really adjusted well to Seattle for some reason. You would think it was a 4-point per game bat. So I wanted that extra roster spot for this matchup against you. I mean, I wasn't going to play Teoscar really outside of maybe tomorrow, but my outfield was pretty full anyway. I've been looking to get Peraza back. I think I traded him when I first joined the league. I wanted him back. I think he's got a ton of upside. I think he's going to get called up probably this week, if not next week, because the Yankees are kind of in no man's land right now. And Alex Ramirez, I think he's actually the Mets' second-ranked prospect because all the dudes graduated. So he's got some name value, a bit of a long-term play, but just wanted some assets for a guy who hadn't played for me in about 2.5 weeks. Wasn't going to use him, and I want the extra roster spot to use against you this week, Cody.
Absolutely. And the next trade, as we're kind of winding down for the week here, another big one on the books. Paul gets Andrew Vaughn, Masataka Yoshida, Bryce Elder, Lazaro Montes, and a 2024 first. Cody gets Luis Robert, Alex Verdugo, and a 2024 second. Paul, I'll let you go first. What was your thoughts with this move?
So the domino that is Luis Robert finally fell. I've been off and on trying to move him for a week or two. I had probably 4 or 5 really solid offers on Luis Robert, but at the end of the day, I went with this offer just because I think Yoshida is probably a little bit better than Robert. I know he's 4 years older, which is 100 years in Bracton years. But Yoshida's a guy, I think, he turns 30, I think, in a month or so. But I still think he's got 5 or 6 years of elite batting, elite stats, elite points. Andrew Vaughn's another guy I've liked for a long time, and I had a hole at first base. He kind of fits that hole, and now I don't really have to worry about that position for a little while. But at the end of the day, for me, it was Yoshida for Robert. That's an even swap, I think. Vaughn for Verdugo, I think that's an even swap. Which, to me, that leaves Elder, Montez, and a first for a second-round pick, which that's theft, in my opinion. I'm not saying that I won the deal hands down, because Elder had a bad start today. There's reason to believe he's not the pitcher that he has been these first few months. But for a 24-year-old pitcher, I'll take the chance on that. Montez, 19 years old, you never know what he'll be. And swapping the picks was a big deal for me, just because now it gives me 2 first-round picks for this coming draft, which gives me, guess what, even more assets.
Absolutely. And from my point of view here, this was kind of Paul mentioned the domino fell. This was kind of the last domino that I had to have fall. I identified on Monday when I was talking earlier about guys I wanted and how I wanted my team to be. And if I were to move Julio Rodriguez, my kind of ideal outfield on assets I thought I could obtain, obviously, Acuna and Soto and all those guys I knew were out of reach or cost too much that I would not want to pay it. But I kind of identified once I got Kelenic that I wanted an outfield of Kelenic, Lau, and Luis Robert, and then with the stable veterans of Cody Bellinger and Cedric Mullins once they come off the IL here in the next couple weeks. Once I get my mind set on something, I kind of have to do it. And I got to be honest, Bracton getting Josh Lau and kind of putting me in a tailspin there. And then, talking with Paul all week about Luis Robert, there were times I really didn't think he was going to move him at all. I tried a whole bunch of different options. Did not want to have to include Yoshida. But for where I wanted my team to be, this trade right here goes into the Julio Rodriguez trade and acquiring all the assets. I can move guys like this. I'm not even going to notice Bryce Elder out of my rotation. Montes is a good prospect. Didn't really want to lose the first, but draft picks are draft picks. I got a second back. No harm, no foul there. Verdugo was a guy I traded for, traded away. I was really glad to get back. Luis Robert is a absolute electric dynamite player, but he is not consistent yet. I'm hoping that comes. Verdugo is a guy that is incredibly consistent, and I feel like having the electric players I have now in my outfield with Robert, Kelenic, and Lau, but having the safety net in Verdugo and Mullins, who are just consistent performers, really made a lot of sense for how I wanted my outfield. And Andrew Vaughn, who was a guy that I kind of felt I needed, and then really acquiring Luis Arias made him expendable with the first base eligibility, playing behind Vlad Jr. So, again, I realize I paid the price there. But again, part of what I was trying to do was acquire assets to pay the prices to get the guys I wanted. So, that was kind of my thought process there with acquiring Luis Robert. Now my offense is kind of exactly how I envisioned Monday it would look. And so I'm super happy with that. And still have the pitching. I'm going to make 2 call-ups this week. Brandon Williamson for a start against the Royals, and A.J. Smith-Shawver for a start against Detroit. I hope I do not have to send them back down. I hope they stay up this time for good with me and become a part of my rotation for the rest of the season. That wraps it up for the week. There was 2 trades I will touch on real quickly during this podcast. Tita got Brendan Donovan, Clay Holmes in a second. Connor gets Tommy Edman, Kenta Maeda in a third. Pretty interesting trade there. I feel like Connor getting Tommy Edman was a big move for him. I'm sure he is happy with that. And the last trade during this podcast was I'm not even going to try to say his first name, but Paul gets Cano, the reliever with Baltimore. Tina gets Martin Perez and Dax Fulton. Paul, real quickly, thoughts on that deal?
It's Yennier Cano.
Yennier. There we go.
Yep. I like Yennier Cano. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, and Martin Perez is rightfully dead to you after the last.
He's absolute fucking dog water. I never want to see him again.
Absolutely. So that was the insane trade week this league has. I will turn it back over to John Height to move on to the next week matchups.
Wow, that was impressive. I don't know how to top that part of the show. But like Cody said, one last part of the episode. Let's do the week 11 matchups, or already 11 weeks into our season here. I think first and foremost, we got to start with me and Cody. Finally, it's WrestleMania week. You know, we've been waiting all year for this. It's the only time I think we're going to play during the regular season. I'll give my thoughts last, but Cody, I'll let you give your thoughts first.
Yeah. So real quick, I'll try to move through this last part quickly, but I do think this matchup needs to be discussed a little. I haven't called up Williamson and Smith-Shawver yet because I need the roster spots for tomorrow. There's a lot of off days on Mondays. I intend to call them up Tuesdays. But listen, look at this. Fantrax predicts right now this score to be 683 to 682. That's the kind of matchup. Yeah, that's what Fantrax has this matchup right now. 683 to 682.
Wow.
1 point game. Yeah, listen, I'm not even going to try to say that I think John Height's going to win, that I think I'm going to win. I think I've put my team in a better position than it was last week to beat John Height. Doesn't mean I think I'm going to do it. It just means I think I have a better shot today than I had last Monday. It's going to be an absolute bloodbath. I hope I can keep up with him. I hope when his offense scores 200 points on me on a Wednesday that my guys can score 190 that same day and keep up with it. But yeah, it's going to be an absolute matchup, and I expect us to have it again in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'll get mine real quick before we have everyone else. So I'm not going to lie. You know, I've won 10 straight. I'm very happy. You know, obviously being undefeated is great. I know it's not going to last forever. I think this is the most vulnerable my team has been so far this season. I know I've squeaked out a couple of close wins here and there. I've had a bunch of really good weeks. I just like the gut feeling I have, you know, Judge isn't back, and that really worries me. I try to replacing that hole with Castellanos. I have him and Soler, who's coming off a big week as well. So that is concerning. I made the Churio deal, and I made that fully knowing that I knew it would jeopardize this a little bit because I think Bieber had a kind of a difficult matchup anyway. It wasn't going to be the end of the world, but, you know, not having Bieber this week, I understood was going to make it a little bit more difficult. I got, Yakuchi and Sandoval going this week as well, which, you know, hold my breath on that one. That's probably going to end up bad. But, again, like I mentioned before, I'm fully aware that next time we play potentially, you know, I'll have my full team back, you know, knock on wood. The three aces that I've been waiting on, especially Rodana's even pitched for me yet. Fried will be back soon, and as well as Erod. So for this week, kind of what Cody said, I don't know who's going to win. It's going to be a bloodbath. I am confident in my offense, though. I think where I'm going to lose potentially is just the pitching, just because there's so much variability with my rotation right now while I'm waiting for them to come back. And I think Cody's rotation, I'm not going to lie, when you were making the trades for McClanahan and J-Rod, it was actually like a little relieved because I was like, okay, I don't have to play them. But then, you know, Robert is back. That sucks. Got to play Josh Lau again. I think played him earlier. That was annoying. So not looking forward to playing against, you have Luis Arias, I forgot, and India. So it's going to be a bloodbath. I wouldn't be surprised if it's decided within, 10 to 50 points, depending on just, there's a lot of things that have to go right, I think, for both of us to win. So it'll be fun. That's all that matters. But we'll go to Paul first. What do you think?
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Looking at this matchup, I believe Cody has Spencer Strider on a 2-start week.
Yep.
At the starts, they're against Detroit and Colorado, 2 pretty weak offenses. Strider might score 80 points. And I think the only double start John Haidt has is Chris Bassett.
Yeah.
Baltimore and Texas, 2 pretty good offenses. Pitching-wise, the matchup leans towards Cody, I think. And then looking at the bats, all the bats that Cody has now, kind of wild because you mentioned Arraez, you mentioned Kelenic, you mentioned Robert. They all have been on my team at some point, so I don't know, maybe I'm not doing it right, but I think the bats also lean Cody's way. This should theoretically be a close matchup, but I think Cody's going to run away with this. I think he's going over 900. I think my guess is going to be about 900 to about 750.
Interesting. And Braxton, what do you think?
Cody's got youth. Cody's going to win. That's all I'm going to say.
Help me.
That's all I'm going to say.
Hey, John Haidt, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked this up. If you and I play, so right now you're 10-0, I'm 9-1. You've got me beat on the record.
Mm-hmm.
You've scored 8,011 points. You lead the league in scoring. I've scored 7,927. So over the course of 10 weeks, you're outscoring me by about 10 points a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
But get this: if you and I played each other every single week for the first 10 weeks of the season, do you know what mine and your record would be? If it was just me versus you every week for 10 weeks.
I know I've won a couple, but I can't imagine it's a lot.
Both of us would be 5-5.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
You've literally outscored me 5 weeks. I outscored you 5 weeks. I mean, listen, who knows what's going to happen this week? It's going to be insane. I think it's the matchup of the year, maybe not just the week, but of the year. It's going to be a lot of fun. Maybe my team being younger will help, right, Braxton?
Yes.
100%.
Cody is the standard for how to build a dynasty baseball team 101. Have nobody over 30 except 2 dudes out of a 30-man roster. There's 2 guys over 30.
I'm actually down to just 1 now, Clayton Kershaw.
That's incredible. That's how you do it. It's amazing. That's the standard.
Well, that's great, but we have a matchup to play this week, and it's not judged on how old his players are compared to mine. So, I've come to a conclusion. You'd rather lose by 500 points than have 5 30-year-olds on your team compared to none. But anyway, that was our matchup. It'll be a bloodbath. Not looking forward to it. Let's go to another one. Let's do Paul versus Tita. This is a very intriguing one. Forgot also this week. Probably the second biggest matchup of the week. Paul, we'll let you go first.
Well, it's hard to predict because my roster is illegal right now. I have 1 extra guy. Hoping I can get a deal done to move a guy and I don't have to force drop a guy. It's going to be wild. I think I'm going to win this one. If Tita's serious about doing a teardown, which, again, he probably is not. He's probably not doing anything to tear his team down. But, he's got double starts. He's got Paxton, who's been crazy good this year, double starting. Looks like John Gray might double start. I know I'm up against it, but I just believe in my team. And I believe what I've assembled. Nolan Gorman's a guy that Cody seemed to just forget when he's mentioning second baseman.
Yeah, that's my fault. My bad, Paul and Gorman.
Just a 23-year-old bat, but, I'm going to take my team, but I've taken, I've had the bold prediction against Bry where I would win, and I did win. And then I said last week I would beat Dave when it wasn't a popular choice of me beating Dave. But I'm gonna pick myself. But of any time I've picked myself, I'm probably the least confident in this week.
Definitely will be a fun one. We'll go to Bracton next.
Paul's got youth. Paul is going to win. That's all I have to say.
God. Go to bed. All right, Cody, what do you think?
So any other week, this is matchup of the week, right? I mean, Tita's 8-1-1. Paul's 6-4 on a roll. Let me tell you a little something about how I'm seeing this matchup. Paul's bats are there. They've been there. The pitching has gotten so much better in the last week. That's going to play a factor here. The question is, how big of a factor? Tita has assembled a team full of dogs that produce, that kill it day after day, that Bracton would hang himself if he owned any of them. So it's wild what Tita's done. I mean, look at his pitchers. You can glance at Tita's pitchers and go, I don't want one of these guys. And then actually glance again and realize they're all 30-point-per-game pitchers. I mean, it's bizarre what he's done, and it's working. He's won 80% of his matchups. If Paul has got 52 prospects, Paul is one of the most dangerous teams in this league. But I think this matchup may come on him too fast. I think he's playing Tita before some of his pitchers get called up, Ben Brown, guys like that, before he can spend some of those 52 prospects to bring in assets. I'm going to give Tita the advantage, but unfortunately for Tita, I see this being another Sunday night 25, 30-point game.
Should be very interesting to see what happens in this one. All right. I guess, Bracton's facing off against Smell. Since his team is younger, are we all in agreement that Bracton's going to win?
I don't know, man. Smell's got some youth.
Who has the youngest player?
Unless Smell has somebody younger than 21-year-old Ellie De La Cruz, I don't know. I don't think.
All right, does. So you're going to win this week.
I need to win this week, John Hyde. I'm on a 5-game losing streak. Okay, this is a must-win game for me if I'm still trying to compete. But this is the best team I've had all year, so I need to win. I hope to win, and I think I will win.
Well, your team is younger, so they should.
Yes.
On to the next
now you're
matchup.
learning. There we go.
Okay. Okay. On to the next one. Bry versus Connor. I'll let Cody go first.
Again, man, what has Connor done to the fantasy gods? I mean, it's every week. It's Jamie. It's Bry. Who does he play next week? John Haidt. I mean, listen, Connor's going to manage. This one's interesting because these two guys probably manage harder than anyone else. I just imagine them at like 10 p.m. sweating behind their keyboard, just adding relievers and just trying to. Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch them two just go on an ad frenzy, all week long. Maybe Paul will trade Bryce some pitching on Saturday to help him win again. Again, mental notes. But yeah, I do. I got to give the advantage to Bry. I think just too much talent is there for Connor to overcome. But again, I'm going to be watching Connor. I like his tenacity every week he has with managing this team.
And Paul, what do you think?
Here's the mental note for you to take. So, Brady Singer scored -2 points yesterday. He was going against my. Maybe I knew that he would go negative, and it would help you even more.
You're playing chess. You're playing chess, not checkers, is what you're saying.
3-dimensional over here in Norfolk, okay? But anyway, back to this. Connor has made some pretty sneaky pickups this week. I mean, we talked about a few of them, But Brady Singer, the guy in question, I mean, besides the negative 2 points, like I had said, 48 points in 2 starts. And, I mean, he's a guy going up against the Angels in his next start. That'll be his only start this week. At home, he's better at home. I'm gonna pick Bry, but it would not shock me if this was close as well, just because Bry has been on a horrible losing streak. I mean, I think he'll get it right, but I mean, it's kind of like Hamko, where it just feels like you're snake bitten, and right now it just feels like he's snake bitten. Bry is.
And Bragdon, who's got the youngest player? I'm sure you know by now.
No, I'm actually gonna go against what I believe here. I'm gonna pick Connor. I think this is gonna be an upset here. I think that I'm gonna go with it. I think that this losing streak with Bry is something that I don't even know what he could be doing to stop it. But I've noticed that Connor's been keeping it close with some really competitive teams here, and I've also noticed that he's had some really, really high scoring days. Like, really high score. I think he had, 140 today? 150? Something ridiculous today he had. But I can see Connor making some moves if it's close and buying some, one week rental type pieces because he wants to win. I know he wants to win. I think he can do it. I think that this is going to be really close, like you guys are saying. But I'm going to be bold and I'm going to pick it.
Usually, I don't agree with Bragdon on a lot of things, very few things actually. I'm also going to take Connor as an upset for this week. I think Bry is due for a bad loss, like a loss that, a matchup that he should win. But, Connor kept it close with Jamie for a while. I know Jamie didn't reach the start max, and obviously Bry will, and Bry's going to throw the kitchen sink at him. I'm going to be a little bold this week too. I'm going to pick Connor just for some fun here. I think he has a shot. He's got some guys that can really pop off in a given week as well. And again, Bry, this is a must-win. So interesting to see what he's going to do, because if he somehow loses this one, then it kind of begs the question, what does he want to do the rest of the season? He's obviously a playoff team, but maybe some sort of retool could be in play if he can't get back on the winning track soon. But on to the next matchup. Let's do Jamie versus Scott. And I'll let Mr. Aegis go first. Bragdon, what do you think?
No, Jamie's going to win this one. It's more talent than age with this one. Even still, Jamie's core isn't over 30. So most of them, Bobby Witt, Ronald Acuna, Tatis, these guys are legit, and they're under 30. So Jamie's got a team full of dogs, and I think that he'll win by 250.
Cody, you're up.
But I got to follow that up, John Hyde.
I don't even know.
No bloodbath. I mean, listen, it's going to be a 250 point matchup. Jamie's going to run away with this one while sleeping through the week.
And Paul.
Yeah, I'll echo Cody. I mean, I'm not even sure if that's what it's late. Richmond. I'm not sure if that's what he wants to even do is win at this point, because it's not that he's tanking, but obviously looking for the future. The biggest question this week is, will Jamie get to 10 starts? I mean, over under. I might take the under still. Yeah.
I'm going to take Jamie as well in this one, but 2 more left before we wrap things up. Hen had a dip because he's got to wake up, I think, at 5 a.m. tomorrow, so he'll be taking on Chad this week. I'll let Paul, you go first.
Pretty much the same as Jamie's matchup. Chad, same thing. Not sure if he even wants wins at this point. More so just looking to acquire talent, looking at the future. It will be interesting to see how Hen's team performs. A little bit of a new look. Subtraction on his pitching staff, that is Taj Bradley. He said he'll supplement with Andrew Abbott. But that's, to me, what we're looking for is, how Hen's going to evolve as the season goes on, I think is something to look at.
And Cody?
I'm going to take Hen Dog, but I'm going to mention something pretty important here. As we move into Week 11, we're in the second half of the season. Hen Dog at 5-5, Jamie at 6-4, Paul at 6-4, Braxton at 4-6. This is where, and Bright 5-4-1. This is where points scored on the season matter. Hen Dog has to score points. Even if he's up by 300, I think he needs to push his team. He needs to make sure he's scoring the max amount of points every week, because when it's tiebreaker season, he's going to want to be sitting there with a bunch of points scored. So I think every week, especially for Hen Dog, matters right now. But I think he wins this week. I think if you're Hen, you're trying to win by a whole heck of a lot.
And lastly, Braxton, but I think we can all guess what you're going to say in terms of your...
I don't think you will. I think that we've been talking about Hen Dog's team all year as a team that's like, okay, score 750, and then he goes back to 560, like high fives, low fives area, you know. If that happens again this week, which I could totally see it happening given some of these monster weeks some of his guys have had last week, if they start coming back down to reality and some inconsistencies pick up again, I could see this game being close. I am going to take Hen Dog because I don't think Chad will do what Connor will do as far as like making moves to get a win, because I think that he is going to be vying for draft pick positioning and just stockpiling young assets by trading some of these guys. And if he does that, depends on how quickly he does it, it could be a little bit of a wider margin, but I think Hen Dog wins, but it's by under 100.
Interesting analysis from everyone on that one. I'll take Hen, but I think it's going to probably be at least 200. Corbin Carroll, guys, could it be an NFL MVP if not for playing in the same league as Ronald Acuna? But one more matchup to do before we end things tonight. We got Dave versus Homko. Homko looking for his second win of the season. Let Cody go first here.
I refuse to pick against Homko until he gets his next win. That being said, Dave, Paul mentioned in the trade part of this podcast how Dave acquired 12 prospects, and 12 good prospects, and that's awesome. I mean, that was definitely some good moves for Dave. But listen, he sold off probably his 3 best players. To do that, that's going to affect him this week. And listen, Homko's going to score in the high 600s, low 700s. I have no reason not to think so. And if he does that, he's going to win this matchup pretty handedly. So I'm going to give the advantage to Homko this week.
Paul?
I'm also picking Homko. He's got to get a win, right? And Dave, like Cody had said, sold his 3 best players on offense for 10 or 11 top 100 prospects, which long term, that's exactly what Dave wants to do. But Homko's got to get a win. I refuse to believe that he's only going to have 1 win through 11 weeks with this roster. It's unfathomable to me. So I'll take Homko. I agree. I think he's going to score in the 600s, and Dave is going to be in the low 500s. So by about 100 points.
And lastly, Braxton.
I can see Homko winning by a lot, but only because of what the others have said. Dave sold his 3 or 4 best players here, and that is going to hurt him, I think, against a team like Homko's. And I could see it being close. Fantrax projects it to be pretty close, but I think that's only because Homko's got 5 pitching starts in there. If he sets his lineup, it could be up by a little more. So I will pick Homko by over 100.
Definitely an intriguing one. I'm going to take Homko. Man is due. He almost beat me a while ago. He almost beat a bunch of teams. No more draws or ties. Just getting some dubs from Kannapolis Cannonballs. Even though I think it will be close with Dave. Dave also has a squad. But that will finally do it for this edition. We're going to do our final thoughts. First of all, thank you for still listening. If you are, you deserve a lot of chocolate and sweets after listening to this whole show. So, final word, Cody, you go first.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick here. Huge league-impacting week. I think a lot of things changed over this week with all the moves that were made. Some guys moving up, some guys moving back, some guys staying where they were. We're getting into the second half of the season. The division standings are kind of starting to take shape here, figuring out where guys are, who's going for it, who's selling. Going to be interesting to see. There's still moves to be made. Paul's sitting there with 52 prospects in his pocket. Look out. I think it's coming anytime now.
And Paul?
So I'll correct you. Since I did the Cano trade, it's 51 prospects now.
Yeah.
So, no, but you're right. And at 6-4, right in the middle of it, I'm still not 100% sure if I want to go for it yet or if I just want to hang back, keep my prospects, get some more maybe. I'm still kind of in that middle. But like you had said, it's kind of becoming clear now that there's 3 or 4 really top teams. There's 3 or 4, essentially bottom teams. But it's interesting to me that middle 5 or 6 teams. Because there's going to be 1 or 2 teams that don't make the playoffs and that they're going to be disappointed. Who those teams are, it's still way up in the air. And we'll see. And plus, it's exciting this week. The 2 top dogs of the league going against each other. I'm excited for it.
And lastly, Bracton.
My team is here. This is a new look Bismarck Larks. I am excited. I'm encouraged that I've got some actual real talent up here now, and I think that this is going to be a very big week for me. If I lose, then I probably will maybe look to sell off some guys. Not some huge players, but some other kinds of players that I just got I might get rid of, but not like McClanahan or Julio Rodriguez, but maybe like a Josh Jung or somebody. But I don't want to do that. I want to win this week. I think I will win this week, but we'll see. So I'm excited.
Well, final thoughts are, again, it was a huge week for the league. I think a lot of good things happened to really, change a lot of team trajectories. Best of luck to you, Cody, this week. I am now convinced, even more, that I could go 19-0 and win a championship. Bracton would still hate my team in college.
100%, yeah.
It doesn't even matter at this point. So that's probably the truth. But anyway, that'll do it for this edition of the Base on Balls podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back next Sunday, or you'll listen to this on a Monday, but we'll be back next week for the recap of this past week. So for now, take care and have a good one.